Good hello. Welcome. It's Onionskin stream day for the first time in a while. Welcome back. Harmony 22 is out. We're going to be doing a great big deep dive into the... Oh, hang on. I'm getting feedback. This is bad. I'm going to mute myself. Great big deep dive into the weight system that has been improved a lot in Harmony 22. Weights have been around for a couple of years now. They've been getting bolstered every time. This can be a potentially industry-shifting event. However, it takes approximately 12 months or so for a lot of new features to sort of hit the mainstream, if that makes sense, because large, potentially shifting things like this, you don't really want to be rushing into it, into like $1 million production and making a decision that this is a whole new way to animate when it may not stick the landing. So we have a really interesting opportunity right now where us as a community can experiment with these tools, practice them, figure out their potential, and how they therefore may be used in some larger scale projects. So this is going to be a pretty massive session. Welcome everyone. Pile into the chat. Say hello. I will be reading it and trying to keep up with it as we go. This is going to be a pretty big session, probably about 3 hours or so. It's going to be pretty dense. I'm going to be doing a lot of talking and a lot of demonstrations. And you could really compare this to one of my personal tuition classes, right? So as outside of the channel, I do a lot of teaching for studios and universities. Sometimes I'll teach the teachers that run the classes and things like that. And on top of it, I also do some personal tuition as well. So like one-on-one or to small groups, just really drilling in on individual topics that they want to learn. They can be a little bit expensive and difficult to book sometimes. So this is sort of an equivalent of that can be for free for anyone who wants to come along and learn it, especially again, while this feature is in its infancy. And not many people are necessarily using it on production yet. However, I predict in another year or so, we will probably be seeing this in production quite a bit. So we owe it to ourselves as a community, especially the riggers and the animators amongst us, to try and get used to these systems now. So if it's going to be worthwhile, how is it going to affect things? This is a whole new way to animate. In fact, it's a whole several new avenues could potentially open up from this. We're going to be exploring a little bit of it together. So enough rambling. Please sit tight, get comfy, open up Harmony if you have it, or grab a notebook. There'll be some opportunities to follow along or do some little, workshops or exercises together and things like that. So I'm going to open up Harmony. Fantastic. So a little bit of a preview on what we're going to get to. I'm going to be working mostly from a blank file and building ourselves up to a completed product. And then I'm going to be working on an actual piece, right? Here is my main onion rig that I use throughout the channel. He's been active for quite a long time now, but he needs an update. I am going to spruce him up a little bit with some of these new features. Once we're all feeling comfortable on the limitations and basically my prediction on where I think this is going to be a big impact. And I've also gathered a couple of examples from my friend on Discord who goes by Long in the official Harmony servers. So if some of you are in there, you might have seen him about. He's very, very active in sort of like the tech support side of things, helping people out. A wonderful member of our community. He's been doing a lot of experiments with these tools as well. So here's a really small example of just one of the things you can do with the new weight deformers. This is completely physics-based. This movement the play button's not working for me on my version, so I'm gonna have to do it all by hand. But you can see this movement here, the only thing that's animating is the topmost peg. It's just sort of like dipping down into the side, and the rest of it is all physics generated with the dynamic springs. I've done a few videos on the dynamic springs in the past, but it's a really, really simple physics modulator. It just sort of throws things back and forwards a little bit. But when you combo it with the weights, you get some really, really cool and dynamic stuff going on. So here's another small example here of like a cat's tail going. So simple movement, you're able to make some really organic effects really easily. I'm going to be pushing things in quite a different direction to these examples, though. I'm going to see how we can combine the new weights with the master controllers, right? So any animators who are watching who have used the master controllers before, you might be... oh, hang on. Get rid of that. Sorry, I've got some spam messages coming in. Got to deal with them. You go. Anyway. Now. Where was I? Oh, I lost my chain of thought already. Oh, boy. Yes. So the master controllers, any animators amongst you who have actually used them have probably got... It's pretty controversial feature. It's got some mixed feelings on if they actually save you time or not. So I think the new weight deformers are going to push us over that threshold where the master controllers are actually going to become really properly useful. Okay, so being a long session, to really get us feeling comfortable with what these new features are like, I'm going to be doing a relatively lengthy lead-in comparing this new system to all of the other deformers that we have learnt along the way. I'm expecting most of you to be relatively comfortable with things like curves and envelopes, the basic stuff. I've done some videos and things like that on it in the past, and we're going to continue to evolve our knowledge from there. We're going to compare it to freeform deformers, the original foundational weight system that was introduced in Harmony 20, through to the rigid deform that came in on Harmony 21, and now the new suite in Harmony 22, which, hang on, let me show it to you real quick. In our node library, we have this system here called weight underneath the regular deformation tab. So we started off with weight deformer, then we got the rigid, and now you can see we've got 4 new pieces: weighted line, weighted point, weighted curve, and weighted drawing. How these combine together is an exceptionally powerful suite of tools. Now, as we go, I always like to keep these sessions as interactive as possible. So if there's things on your mind, please shout it out in the chat. Please ask any questions. I'm happy to go on small tangents and things, although I will be trying to stay as on topic as possible for this, because I don't intend to delete the stream afterwards. It's going to be up as a regular video, so those who are going to sit down and watch the whole 3 hours after the fact will be able to get something out of it. Alrighty, so I'm going to be demonstrating a lot of this with a relatively simple set of shapes. If you'd like to construct something similar, it's just going to be a simple grid of blue stripes, some blue stripes like this, some red ones going the other way, and I'm going to fill in all of the spaces with some green. So this shape is pretty wonky. It's got some bits overthrown onto the edges, it's got different colors, and above all, it's got textures throughout the middle. And we'll put a color card into the background just to make our stage a little bit easier to look at. And let's begin, shall we? We all ready? All right, so I'm going to be using the regular deformers to start with, because I really want to show you how this compares to the regular envelopes as we go in. So here's regular envelope node in the deformer settings. By starting off on the drawing layer, I'm just going to click and drag, and I'm going to create a circle shape around here. So, normally you would trace the edges of a shape, but I'm going to be doing it on this sort of square shape just so that you can see, understand, and respect how the deformation affects the outside of a shape versus the inside of a shape. Okay, so as I stretch it out like this, you can see the outside of the envelope remains relatively intact. It seems to know what to do there. Whereas we see the inside, the shape collapses quite suddenly. You wouldn't really want to use this for if you've got letters, plaid shirts, any real sort of texture. Envelopes don't tend to behave very well in that circumstance. So the thing we've been wrestling with as an industry for a long time is how do we handle internal textures in 2D? In the classic days, you've probably seen this growing up. A lot of traditional shows, if someone had like a plaid shirt or whatever, it would simply just be masked back there. It would just be this solid shape that just wouldn't move, and the character would be masked on top of it. Like Chowder, that was a show that lent into that method as like a feature. Like everyone in that show had textures all over their body, and it was just sort of this static shape that would stay put as the character moved around it. But we want to figure out a way to do it for real. And the reason why the envelope still exists in this way, even though we have solutions now, is simply because it is much nicer on the CPU. Very important when rigging to be thinking about the performance of your computer. A lot of new riggers will get very excited and they'll start throwing all the bells and whistles in with little thought as to how much they're slowing their computer down. They give it to a team of animators, they put 5 characters on screen at once, or lo and behold, a crowd shot, computer catches on fire and everyone dies. So, fortunately, along comes Harmony 17 with the first solution. So I'm going to unhook this. And we're going to explore the first solution to the problem, which was the freeform deformer. A lot of people love this system. It's very, very popular. It was a button that was added to the deformation controls over here, freeform mode. So if I just go bang, 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 really, really simple to set up. You just go click, 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 click. Everything goes into place. Go back to the transform tool and we'll see that we get some behavior like this. So people love this system because of how easy it is to set up. It's relatively reliable. I should be able to get in and twist some of these points as well. So you get a lot of control over it if you've got some cloth and things like that. But you hit some downsides very quickly. And with this shape in particular, it points out to you pretty fast what it is, right? You can see that the texture outside of the direct point that I'm grabbing all gets influenced. So things get pulled backwards, things get sort of pinched towards the middle, and there's no distinctive hierarchy. None of these points are like a parent or a child. Now that can be considered a good thing because one of the huge drawbacks of the regular envelope is that you are restricted to a classic parent-child relationship. Ding, 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 all the way down. You have to choose a beginning and an end, whereas the freeform, it doesn't care. There is no beginning in the end. But the other big difference you'll notice is the envelopes have every point that you create, every one of those points is its own distinctive node that you can sort of unstrap, you can rearrange, you can do all sorts of things with, whereas the freeform deformer doesn't have that luxury. If I go inside that group, you can see it is just a single node, and as I create more points for it, the layer properties simply gets expanded. You can see here point, point 1, point 2, point 3. So, you know, starting with point 0, this is 4 points, and they're all compacted into one node. So it's very convenient, but you don't really have much control over it. You can't do things like get to this point over here and then, you know, like what if I wanted to parent this side to, you know, like a character's hand and this side to a character's other hand, or, you know, something dumb like that. I can't tell these points to be parented to different things, whereas regular envelopes I sort of can. Like this can go out to somewhere there, this can go out to somewhere there. But the drawback with the curves is that I can't have stacked parents. I can't have something come into it from somewhere else. Like that sort of backs it up, right? So what I always come back to when talking about this stuff is everything you do in Two Move Harmony is basically a decision between efficiency versus control. It's this huge sandbox software. There's 1,000 ways to go about doing anything. That's one of the things that makes it kind of tricky to learn sometimes. However, there is like, man, I need to get someone to manage these spam messages coming in. This is getting ridiculous. So distracting. All right. Man, I need to nominate someone as a mod. Okay. I need to keep my notebook on me. It's not throw me off track whenever that happens. Golly, I really do lose my chain of thought, huh? All right, so. Oh yeah, everything is to do with efficiency versus control. So when you learn like 3 different ways to go about solving a problem, you have the way that's really efficient, so it's sort of this like canned response. You'll get it done in like 3 seconds, but you kind of you have to do it the way that you're told to do it, which is what the freeform controller is. Whereas the weight deformer, which we're going to get into next, is the hard opposite. It's the one where it is not very efficient at all, but you have maximum control. So some of the things we're going to be setting up are going to take us ages to set up, but the amount of control we get over it is just freaking insane. So especially in a large production setting where you have dedicated riggers where that is their job, and then animators who use those rigs, it could prove to be very, very powerful. However, I'll talk about the caveats when we get there. All right, so there's the classic stuff, the weight deform and the freeform. Is there any questions about that so far? Please throw it into the chat. I'll give them a read. Otherwise, let's go have a look at our first weight deformer. So I'm going to head back into the node library here, and I'm going to get the regular weighted deformer out. And what I'm going to do at first is just combine this with the regular weight deformer that we already had. Okay, so just quick reminder, the regular weight, when it's on, you know what? I'm actually going to ungroup these nodes just so that we can really understand the core mechanics. That's what I really want the takeaway to be today, the core mechanics of how this stuff works, so that you can have a bit more confidence in your own experiments when you take this away and try some of this stuff yourself. All right, so regular weight curve, quick to set up, but it breaks interior textures, right? So the weighted deform is a grounding mechanism. It's a way to make textures behave very easily. So you have to ground it with a peg at the top. It goes into the offset, and it also goes into this primary input at the top of the weight. Then you unpin the regular drawing and hook it into the left here. You see this sort of like, tealy looking one appears. And then when you connect that back to the drawing again, the envelope comes back. But now it will work and everything behaves the way you would expect. Really, really nice way to just add that functionality when you need it. What I was talking about before with regular envelopes, they're still what you want to use like 95% of the time because they're way, way faster. You don't want to use you only want to have a weight when you need it for textures and things like this. So this makes it a really convenient and fast system to set up. If you need textures and things like that, then you just ground it with the weight and then you're good, and then you carry on and everything's fine. So I've encountered this recently with like a character that has like leg hair or junk like that. I'm seeing a few friends come into the chat now. Hello everyone, welcome. Keep it up. If anything is confusing or you need a little bit more of a thorough explanation, please point it out. Okay, now so this is where the weight starts to get super interesting. We have the regular set, but like a lot of other, this is actually like a composite node as well. It can take more than one input. Okay, so I'm going to unhook this curve. I'm going to unhook this whole system. I'm now going to add in yet another set of deformers, but this one is going to be like a classic curve setup, right? Using the envelope. Golly, I need to stop using green on green. 1 second, I'm going to update these swatches so that they're a little bit more compatible with our controls. I'll make this closer to a yellow, and the red can be a little bit closer to a magenta. How's that? Something like that. There we go. All right. Oh, whoops. I used a freeform because I'm a dummy. Envelope. Sweet. All right. So I'm just going to use a regular little curvelope, as they say. So that will sort of bend like this. Hooray. So here's the next really cool thing that envelopes can do. That weights can do. Let me ungroup this again so we can still understand the inner workings of it. Is what if I combine our two sets of deformers together like this? What do you think is going to happen? Put it back in. Both sets of deformers have appeared. And you'll notice, when I select it correctly, it works. Isn't that cool? So, a couple of interesting things to point out here. Now, when you're using this on a regular shape, the fact that this little bit of texture out here, the fact that it's shifting, you don't have to worry about that, right? Normally we're making envelopes around the perimeter of a shape and it's only affecting things that are on the inside. I've only drawn it on the outside so you can get a real foundational understanding on what's happening. But also notice that the interior texture manipulation stops dead at the middle curve and everything on the left stays put. And I can use that middle curve to adjust the interior of this texture. So both deformer sets can coexist at the same time completely happily. This blew my mind the first time I saw it. I think this is unbelievably cool. I've used this in a number of different circumstances now where I've been able to, rather than having a really, really complex rig that was made out of like 6 or 7 different shapes, I was actually able to keep everything as one layer and just use the weight deformer instead in order to just do it. So for someone who's like wearing a coat, for example, they've got like a, you know, like a button-up shirt sort of going down the middle, I could just put that curve straight down the middle exactly as I've done here, and I could get control over both the outside and the inside of that shape without having to break it down into 3 layers and mask things in and you know, get a little bit ridiculous. So especially for minor characters on a production, like extras and things like that, where you want to have a little bit of extra control, but you don't want to overdo it, this can be a really nice solution. So I hope that makes sense. So if there's no questions, I'm going to move on into the next chapter of this, which is combining this setup with pegs. So it doesn't just work with deformers, it works with pegs as well. So I'm going to take away this middle curve set that I had here. Hang on, I'm going to... Actually, before I do that, I need to erase all these keyframes so I can just continue with a blank canvas. That makes sense. A little bit of a curve off there. Yeah. All right, so what if I put a peg in instead? If I put a peg there, we can see that its pivot will be in the middle there, and it'll work. If I take this curve set out, sorry, the envelope set, you'll notice that the peg will have a very different behavior. It affects the whole thing. But when it's combined with our envelope set, it sort of creates a boundary, right? So it's only going to be manipulating the texture within this boundary. So sort of twist that around, pull these edges out, grab this peg again to sort of like move the center point around in different ways. Notice how it sort of pinches as well. This pinching behavior is really important to understand in how on how it compares with the other weight sets. If I go to the weight deformer itself in layer properties, you get a small amount of control on how you can influence this. So let me just show you what happens if I sort of jack these up. So pre-bend amount 10, it's like disappears. Hang on, let's do a small amount. 2, 1, 0.5, 0.2, 0.1, 0. And then if we go -1, no, that doesn't do anything. Forget about that. All right, post-bend amount. If I put that up to 10, you can see it just really rounds things out. It is taking the majority of the texture with it before it sort of stretches it. So that parameter there could have particular uses if you want to take the inside of a shape and sort of tear it out from the outside. I think this gives a really clear example on how this sort of deformation works. However, controlling it with just a number can be a little bit of a limitation. What we're going to be getting into a bit later is how you, rather than just sort of expanding or contracting its edge, can you do it with things like, you know, other deformers? Can you do it with a drawing? Could you sketch in a shape and have the weight follow that instead? The answer is yes now, and it's very, very cool. All right, so I'm actually getting through this a bit quicker than I thought, so I don't know, we'll still see if we're here for 3 hours or not, but... Oh, pardon me. The next step to take this is, well, what if instead of just one peg in the middle, we reconstructed this entire system out of only pegs? What happens then? So I'm going to unhook all of this. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'm going to start again. Yeah. Let's start again. That way I can preserve this, and the working file for this can be downloaded on the Patreon later. So we're going to get a new, not a weighted drawing, a weighted deform like that, new peg to ground it with. And this time I'm going to sort of create a pseudo replica of that weighted deform that I had, but exclusively with pegs. And let's see what the difference is in that circumstance. So I'm going to create 1, 2, 3, 4 pegs like this. Hook them all up like so. Hang on, can I just press Alt to do that? Oh, not really. Hang on, wait. 1, yeah, now we're flying. Look at that. Okay. How easy is it to hook up each one like that though? Nah, not very. Maybe that one's still done by hand. I'm sure there's a shortcut. I'm just too stupid to know it. All right. So if I hit the weighted deform itself and I press the show controls button, so, when in doubt, press that, it should show up all of the control points themselves. I'm going to go to each one of these pegs, go to the rotation tool to access their pivots, and I'm going to sort of replicate what we had before by placing the 4 pivots around. Now, although this is a square, I've traditionally been arranging this as a circle because I wanted to show off the outside of the shape. Let's do this as a square though, just for argument's sake. We might compare the difference. So 4 pegs in each of the 4 corners. What I want you to see is how this compares to the freeform. Check that out. So if I grab these 2, sort of stretch it out like that, pretty cool. Let's do I will do one more freeform, this time to the corners, just because I want you to see the differences. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we see here, we get, like, do you see what I mean? Like it's a really similar result, but there are some differences. If I can pick up these 2 like this, if I pinch that in, so we sort of get this like curvy shape here, but there is definitely like more push and pull around the other points. Whereas the weight equivalent of this, it takes longer to set up. So like, keep that in mind, but it seems to play around where the other points live much better. We can see a little bit of push and pull, but like way back here, but the edges are pretty respectful. They're really staying put. And it sort of pinches down in a relatively similar way. It really hones in on the point itself rather than the edges around it. I think that's really cool. Personally, I've been using this version of the weight deformer way more than the freeform. I know the freeform is still very popular, but I feel like it was made obsolete pretty much like within 1 year when this system came out. Now let's push it a little bit further by redirecting it back to the pretend circle shape that we had before. This is going to be quite interesting because it's sort of like a bit of a diamond going on. Now we get this. So you should be able to see the sort of like diamond shape at play. Even though there's no physical lines connecting them, by examining the shape of the grid, you can really see where the influence begins and ends. I think that's quite interesting. So you can add as many points as you want. And again, being a deformer type, sorry, being a peg type rather than a deformer type, let me put these back in the corners, we get far, far more control than the freeform could ever hope to get, okay? Because remember, the freeform, all of its points are locked within layer properties. I can't get to point number 3 and then use it as a parent for something else. That's really annoying. Whereas over here, it's super, super easy. I can have a brand new drawing like this, hook it in there, do it, that sort of, whatever that is, use your imagination. And when I plug it in, assuming I picked the right point, right? You know what I mean? Like this is really, really cool. There's so much that you can do with this. I have a shape that is parented to just one point, but not the others. I can take this even further, and I could have, say, 2 points be parented to another. So like what if, so like these 2 here, right? These are the 2 on the left. So if I'm always moving the 2 on the left, then, just those 2 could be a parent. Like put one peg in there, and now we've got one that always moves to the left. However, its pivot is in the middle. So that means when I rotate it, it's going to do this. So you get like this ridiculous amount of control over the weight system. Like just the fact that everything's made out of pegs is amazing, because like pegs are the foundation of this software. And for a really long time, you couldn't really combine them with deformers all that well. But now you can, and it's so freaking cool. What's another example? I'm sure there's heaps. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, like what if I were to daisy chain them? That'll be interesting. So like if I did this, rather than them all being connected to the top, then if I move this one around now, it's going to, like, that will be the parent of this one, that will be the parent of this one. We've sort of created like a bone hierarchy out of this thing, right? And if I pick all 4 of them at once, then we're going to go, whoa, and everything will sort of like collapse in on itself, and that's really fun. So like the possibilities are already limitless, and I promise we are still only just scratching the surface because we've only talked about the regular weight so far. Chris Forney has chimed in on the chat and says you can also set a point kinematic output underneath the weighted deform and have it interpolate the transform based on the grid. Yes, that is a fantastic point. I might show a version of that now. Hang on, let me read it again so I know that I'm understanding exactly what you're saying. You can have a point kinematic beneath the weighted deform and have it interpolate the transform based on the grid. If I'm understanding that right, are you sort of saying that like putting the point kinematic here or somewhere else? I'll get a little bit more clarification before I do a demo of that and go off on a weird tangent that you weren't actually saying. Now, I'll show just one more demo with the classic weight before we get to all of the expansions that have come into it ever since. And that is, not only does it combine well with regular deformers, but it combines well with the constraint system as well. So I showed this off at the beginning of the stream, this crazy dress here. A rudimentary version of that, which has been somewhat plausible for some time, is the combine it with constraints, right? So if I get the constraints out and go to something like the dynamic spring, I could put that under, what are our 2 bottom points? So these two, these two. So if these two follow the dynamic spring like that, then if I animate this across, check this out, F6, F6, so as that goes across, we should see a little bit of physics going on. Whoa, look at that. pretty simple stuff, but it's pretty cool how well that works on just a real basic setup. Because everything is going to follow along with that master peg, right? So if a couple of the points are told to delay with the spring, then you're able to have things droop and sway and do all sorts of stuff. So for many, many years, all we had to do that with was the 2-point constraint. And you had to be pretty clever to be able to get some cool stuff going with it. But I feel like the possibilities with the weight is just nuts. Really, really cool. I think we're next going to move into an expansion for the weights, and then we'll have some time at the very end to muck around with some other things like that kinematic output version. So are there any questions or anything so far? We've only got a handful of people in the chat, so hopefully it's all making sense so far. But even those who are sort of just watching along for fun, if I could ask you to sort of punch in what your background is, like I'm assuming everyone here animates to some extent. Like, is Harmony your main tool? And if so, in what ways do you use it? Like I saw Tobias is here. I know that you're very much like a traditional hand-drawn guy. So I'd be curious to hear your take on this as like the heavy rig side of things. If this is like, is this really outside your wheelhouse, or is this something that you're embracing a little bit at the moment? I'm not sure. I want to know because there's definitely ways that we can hook this entire system into the way that traditional animation works. It's not really the focus of today's session, but I'd love to explore those possibilities in the future. All right. Anyway, so let's move on with the next set of the weights, the one that came in version 21, which is the rigid point deform. So this is sort of like an answer to the quad map in a funky way. So I'm going to take a duplicate of what we just had to not leave that old one behind. So this still has the 4 points in the 4 corners. I'm going to ditch the spring and the keyframe here. And we're going to get the rigid point out. So the things start to get another level of complexity here. So like I say, efficiency versus control. Things are about to get more complex. The other weight types complement the regular weight deform. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So this is always the baseline. all of the other weight deforms come back to this one as a sort of central composite. So we've got the rigid point deform, the weighted curve, the weighted line, the weighted point, and the weighted drawing. And the correct order that I should put these in is rigid point, weighted line, weighted curve. That's sort of the hierarchy. And then the weighted drawing is kind of its own thing. Now, and how all of these work is they go above the weighted deform. Okay, so we're going to show that off with the rigid point, where we put all 4 in like this, and then that comes down to the weighted deform. So this is the correct setup for a system like this. Now, hopefully we can still get the points to show up. Yes, we can. And watch how this looks a little bit different to what we had before. Okay, see that? So we're getting something that is kind of between the freeform and the quad map, I think. So there is more influence sort of happening on the other side of these lines now. But everything that's happening on the inside is much more, well, rigid. So this is if you've got like planks and things like that. You can see, especially when I grab 2 points, it's like those are staying straight lines. Should we compare it to how that was before? Let me get this out. So this was sorry, all over the place today. When I grab these 2 on the side, you can see, there you go, like that's pretty clear, the difference, right? So you can see how it's trying to even it out, trying to bend between the 2 points. Really stretchy, almost an answer to the glue from way back in the day. And if I grab 1 point and try to bend that in, if I'm sort of making like some pseudo perspective, right? Everything's sort of like squishy and curvy. Back to the rigid point. It's set up. Whoops. Once again, very, very straight, full on plank. Might as well just be using the transform tool. And then if I pull these 2 corners in, this is, you see that? So it's a lot like the quad map. So you can sort of use this to get like a little bit of pseudo perspective going on in as like a deformer method. So if we're sort of clever with how we set that up, like, you know, if I put these out to the sides like that, then maybe I can sort of have this look like it's trailing off into the distance or something. I don't know. Yeah, kind of. That's sort of the idea. So nothing too crazy with that one. Now, I might do some live experiments here. Some things where I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen. Like what, for example, will happen if we throw our original curve set into here? What will that do? Get a rigid point deform. In you go. Should have removed the keyframes first. All right. Look at that. So it wants to move only the latest point. So the weight deform doesn't play so well with parented deformers. So I believe the idea here is, and the reason why the rigid point is sort of a complementary system like this, is so we can sort of do something like this. Now we're getting a little ridiculous now, but bear with me. F7. So now we've got rigid points in each of the 4 corners, and then a weight system around in a circle. And let's see what the behavior is like now. So we can see everything will get pinned to the outer edges. This would probably be the same if we had regular pegs there as well. But, oh, hang on, we've got 2 rigids. Don't need 2 rigids. Yeah, I don't think I have too much to say here. I'm experimenting with it in the wrong direction. I'm confusing myself. I should stick to the main demos before we go into the weird stuff, because I'll be happy to take some suggestions from the chat on what you would like to see me experiment with in the later half of this. Because pretty much everything over the last 45 minutes has been prologue. We're only just now getting into the new weights now. So, we have had rigid point, and now we are going to mess with weighted point. I need to make copies of all this stuff as we go, so I can tidy it up for the Patreon video later. All of you go over here. Chris Funny says, rigid point is primarily used to deform textures in a way that you don't have to actually rotate or scale the content. It takes the position of all of the points and applies them as if you had transformed. That's a much better explanation. So it sounds, Chris, like you've... Wait, hang on. Chris Funny, are you the one who made this? or is this someone else? I know there's a Chris on the dev team that is heavily involved with building this system, so if that's you... or you're someone who just has experimented with the system a little bit further. Oh, shush. I'm sorry. Okay, cool. Oh, man, I'm so excited that you're here. I hope that you'll be sticking around with me in the background for the next 3 hours, because I certainly have some things to pick your brain in. Because, like, from my experiments so far, right, I have no actual way to tell if I'm just going off in some weird direction or if it is actually the desired path of what the devs have had in mind for this system. So I am going to tangent. I am going to do as I'm told right now. Primarily used to deform textures in a way that you don't have to rotate or scale the content. It takes the position of the points and applies them as if you had transformed. So if I'm understanding that right, is that something a little bit closer to just what I was doing the first time around, like the quad map, or is it more about like if I had a fifth point in the middle and then the way it sort of does there? Because that's still a very pinched result, which I have a feeling isn't exactly what people would be going for. So I think there might be something I'm misunderstanding in that explanation. Yep. Help me out. It is like the quad map. Okay, sweet. Because I love the quad map, but my problem with it, I'm probably not alone here, is like how it's very much bound to the shape of the camera on the outer edges. So it's pretty common that I'll do something like this, where I'll put a peg underneath the quad map, expand the desired shape to match the quad, and then put another peg on top, and then to like bring it back down again to the shape that I really wanted. Actually, no, I'm an idiot. I'm wrong, because that obviously didn't work. So, you know, whatever. Geez, how do I solve that? Do I go around putting an apply peg transformation on it? It's weird what stuff is muscle memory until you actually have to try and explain it. Yeah, there we go. That brings it back down. That feels like a workaround, and probably not the most ideal way to go about working with the quad map. But comparing that result for everyone else, you can see how like that sort of bends and twists everything on the outside, but you get some really nice perspective results. However, I couldn't help but notice that the rigid weight doesn't do this. It doesn't push the outer edge out in a really heavy way. You take 4 points and translate them all clockwise. Okay, let's give that a go. What will that do? So get rid of that. So I'm assuming that you mean the 4 points as individual elements like this. And then I go, whoa, nothing happened. If I take the whole thing like that, it goes. Rigid point primarily used to deform textures in a way that you don't have to actually rotate the scale or content. So it's mostly for rotation, but nothing's happening at all when I rotate. I'm a dummy. Imagine you're rotating all of the points, but you're just moving them to rotate them. Right. Oh, as in like this? This kind of rotation that I was doing before? Like that. I think I get it. Because like as I continue to sort of like do a pseudo rotation, this is like maintaining its mass. and is more or less the shape that it was before, whereas I have a feeling if I did that with the standard weights, that wouldn't have worked. Cool. All right, I get it. That's very, very cool. And could you tell me, is there, like, because I've always been more curious about, like, because it is separate from the regular weight, like it isn't like a foundational set, I'm guessing that there are scenarios where you would want to do something like this that I haven't fully gotten to the bottom of yet. For textures on traditional content. Got it. Okay, cool. So quick little setup if you're doing hand joining, you need to move some things around. Cool. We're all learning today. I wonder if I'll be able to do myself. I'm so curious to learn more about the experimentation process behind the scenes and what have other people made with this system so far that you guys probably didn't even conceive it was capable of. Because if I remember right, you were around back when... Didn't you write the constraint system as well? I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to say this out loud. I can edit it out later if that's the case. Let me know if it should be censored. But like when when the master controllers were sort of like in their infancy, and you needed to have like a dedicated coder on hand in order to get them running properly, and there's been sort of this push to get it more and more user friendly ever since. And I think we've got the final piece now. But while I have your ear, I think the final piece to really get it going, and maybe you guys did this on purpose because it is like an experimental phase, is a convert curve deformer to curve weight button. Because when I've tried to replicate building a shape with regular curves, it takes ages, and that's what we'll be doing a little bit later. And if there's a button to sort of just make it turn into that, then like we'll see a huge uptick in its use. But I respect that that's probably going to take ages to code, and you guys probably just wanted to get something functional out the door, hey? Yeah, I'm not seeing too much difference with that. I guess if you wanted to like mess around with the values of one of them or whatever. Anyway, back on task. Let's explore the difference between the rigid point and the... Hang on, wait a minute. Have I already done it? Did I forget what the difference between... Yeah, no. Rigid point and weighted point. Yeah. All right. So, I have already forgotten what the difference between rigid point and weighted point is. Sorry. Hopefully it comes back to me once we get it set up. And like I say, a lot of this is prelude before the sort of the grand finale where I'm going to be taking this into my main onion rig to rebuild its mouth set, because I tried to build the mouth in a particular way with the classic weights when that was brand new, because I really wanted to see what the potential with this was. But I couldn't get it quite running. It busted in render view, but I'm pretty confident that it'll run now. All right, so with everything sort of twisted around, we can see that the weighted point really does have a different sort of feel and does not maintain its shape at all as I rotate it around like this. How very fascinating. Meanwhile, pushing and pulling its points. Ah, cool. I see what's going on here, I think. Hang on, wait, do I? Wait. No, I don't. It seems to be the same. Is it just because it gives you some... Because I know the weighted line and the weighted curve is all about giving you some extra control handles. And when I first opened this up, I was like, oh, weighted point lets you see the handles, whereas the rigid doesn't. And I was like, no, hang on, that's stupid. Of course you can see the points. So, Chris, I might have to come back to you one more time to tell me what is the deal with... Oh, no, hang on. It's in the... Wait, is it in the point? Hang on. Maybe the icons are a clue. Weighted point is circled around the corners, whereas rigid point is sort of bendy around the corners. So maybe this is even more quad mappy. But it's not, because it's stretchy. So far, it's behaving just like if I didn't have the weighted point on at all. Oh, okay. First matches the transform that would cause it, and then deforms to match otherwise. Used for textures on traditional... Oh, that was the other thing. The only difference is it provides the extra weights. So you can weight one set of points differently to another. Ah, great. Okay, that's awesome. So that is a way of sort of taking these values and splitting it up into separate sets. So these two can have more influence than these two. That's awesome. That's such a simple explanation and really, really useful. So maybe we'll come back and experiment with the possibilities of that a little bit later. Oh, no, screw it. Let's do it now. Why the hell not? We've got the time, I think. Yeah, it's only been 1 hour. I've still got 2 more hours to go. This would be great. All right, so here we go. Weighted point. Now, is there a way to see the region of influence? That would be pretty interesting. Like, let's take these two down there like that. And we're going to increase their maximum distance by 10. Just a stupid amount. Oh, we can. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, man, that makes me so happy. You guys thought of everything. And this one is 0, so that's why it's all pinchy. Pinchy. And so we'll set you up to 2. Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, okay, this is making me happy. Oh, I like this. This is so cool. All right, man. Once again, efficiency versus control, right? This is such a nice balance of that, where there is... that is so fast to set up, and yet a little bit more control than just using one. Man, I'm thrilled. Well done. So now, I'm curious if it stacks. What happens if I pump that to 10? Okay, I'm guessing that's not meant to be compatible. I'm sorry. I don't want to break anything. Okay, so it's definitely pulling it towards the two sides. Hang on. Yeah, so regular weight doesn't show regions of influence, but the other one does. Fascinating. Okay, now hang on. So I'm getting distracted a little bit here. I'm taking this back to the... Hang on, undo. I'm going to head back over here and have a look at the rigid deform, because I want to see if they're... Oh, sorry. I was trying to plug it into the display. Oh my god. Okay, hang on. Yeah. All right. I want to see if these things get zones of influence as well, because I don't want to overlook anything. Cool. All right. Oh, that's fun. Okay, I'm happy with this. Okay, they have regions of influence that look very separate. Man, the possibilities of this is just absolutely bonkers. Can't believe it. Far out. So weight one set differently to the other. These not having it on, that is. What the heck does that mean? I'm not understanding what you mean at all. These not having it on, that is. Also selecting a peg with the translate tool. Tab should make the pivot jump to where your cursor is. My little favorite cheat now. Yeah, I learnt about that one. That's really cool. Whoa. I pointed that one out in my video yesterday. I spent a bit of time with the new release trying to figure out all the new pivot quality of life changes. I think there's some super nice ones that you've done there. I'm really happy with them. Okay, so for everyone else who's been watching along, rather than just me and Chris geeking out together, which I've been wanting to do this with you for literally years. So like, I'm having a great day. Now I'm gonna swap this out for the line next, because I thought the line was very cool, and I'm looking forward to exploring those possibilities as well. By the way, whenever I finish one of my private tuition sessions, I spend like a following hour after the class is done tidying up the notes so I can package it all nicely for the client. But sometimes that takes me as long as the session itself, because like when I'm in the fray, this is what I end up with, and I have to just look at this huge just pool of notes and just be like, oh god, what the heck did I make? And then label it all nicely with backdrops, and it's all good. So I promise that this isn't like my standard way of working. It's just a way to sort of keep the pace up while we are live. Okay, so weighted line. This one's really fun. This is sort of like, I feel like I'm being judged now that Chris is here. Sort of like the bone tool, the classic bones, but you can sort of envelope them a little bit, which is really neat. So just like the points But now, rather than having zones of influence, you are able to parent the direction that they go in, which is nuts. This is a tool that I have specifically wanted for years, and we're going to get into the curve stuff, which is it even more. I'm curious if you've seen this, Chris, because I had like a thesis that I wrote down like 2 years ago, and I never sent it. Because when I first when this feature set first appeared in my wish list, I've got like probably about 100 feature requests. Oh my god. But I haven't sent any of them yet because I have a bit of an understanding on how you guys go about deciding what tools are worth focusing on next and what isn't. And I really don't want to just send a dumb list of things that I personally want that aren't sort of like vetted by the students that I work with, the studios that I work for, and the really common stuff that I think everyone really benefits from, rather than just me who likes to experiment, wants to muck around with. Where did I put it? Harmony 22 research? No. It is in it was one level up. Study harmony research. I didn't put it in my 21 timing research, did I? No, it's in rigging theory. Here we go. Auto patching theory, feature pitches. Maybe it's that one. Okay. So, because I've been hypothesizing how on earth this feature could come together, just on my own, because whatever. Because I knew like what the idea was, right? It's like something like this. I'm not sure if this is what the original experiments were like, but I was just like, I love the stacking nature of pegs. You have one peg where the circle goes left and right. You have another circle where the circle goes up and down, and then you combine them together and the movement goes diagonally. Hooray! However, deformers never had that luxury because they always have to be parented to the next one up in the chain. You couldn't really daisy chain types of movement together with curves, and that was always felt like this fundamental limitation that was in conflict with the way the rest of the program worked. And I was just like, man, there's got to be some way that you can sort of do like an apply peg transformation kind of thing to it. What if a curve had like another port on the left where you could plug pegs into it and then stack them and things like that? And I was like, oh, I think like I thought of it like in 2 different years and then ended up illustrating it twice and then found the old illustration and I was just like, oh, nah. But that, because it still needs to be connected to the other thing, and like, what if it was a bone deformer? They sort of like follow along with their parents, so if they had pegs as well, it'd just be a mess. I was like, I couldn't quite crack it, obviously because I'm not a developer on Toonboom. I don't know how the damn thing works. But it was just like, how do we plant the seed in case it wasn't already being discussed on the inside? So for everyone else, this was the solution. This is what they came up with. And I think it's brilliant. Rather than having any kind of top to bottom hierarchy at all in the way that the classic envelopes work, let's treat it like we do the layering, like a composite layering. You know, left is to the top and then the rightmost is towards the bottom. What if we just stacked the hierarchy like that? And that's exactly what the weighted line and the weighted curve do. So we have 4 points here, and you can see that it goes. You can see the line sort of is pretty faint, but you can see it sort of connecting in a linear fashion. And as I go down, 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 and it just sort of connects and it creates a parenting hierarchy like that. And it's so simple. It is so cool. And you know, as I rearrange this, you can see this line here actually rearranges itself. So you know, my first experiments with this, I hooked it up in the wrong order, like it was this sort of Z shape like this, and I was like, okay, that's fascinating, and then was able to get a thing going. And I was like, no, but like you can't. How do you have it loop? Oh dear. He's like, oh, come on, doofus. It's a peg. It can be in both. It can be the beginning and the end at the same time and create a closed loop like that. And there we go. Now we have a closed in line that can be any shape. Yes, it uses less nodes. It's so much simpler than the dumb theory that I came up with. Brilliant. GG. I applaud everyone. Well done. Hang on. Yeah. While I'm talking, assuming Chris is still watching, because all of this is just like rambling, gushing towards you guys now. Sorry if I'm fanboying out a little bit. But this has happened to me a couple of times now where I've sort of written out a feature request and then you guys have been on top of it already anyway. Because this has happened to me before with the retiming nodes. I spent ages hypothesizing it, and then you guys went and did it anyway, and you did it better. Way better. Are you curious to see what my original thought was? Oh my god, this is so embarrassing. It was... this. Actually, I still think there might be something in here. Sorry, this is dumb. This is a tangent. I'm sorry for everyone who's here to learn curve deformers. I'll put chapter titles in the description. You can skip this bit. Okay, this idea, right, is... oh my god. Okay, so function sharing. What if functions could work like nodes do? And, you know, because like regular nodes, they go from top to bottom. If there was a left to right function sharing system, because I think it's a very not very known feature and it's very underutilized, is the idea of copying and pasting individual functions around to different parameter types. Like, you know, having the rotation of something affect the transparency of something else. I think that's really, really cool. But it's relatively invisible. You kind of just need to remember what is parented to what in the X sheet and stuff like that. So it's just sort of like, I don't know, this is a stupid idea, but like, if it was sort of like represented visually, and sometimes I explain it this way to students as like, this is what's going on inside of a drawing layer, like it's made of all of these different parts. So like, you know, if the Bezier functions of parameters were sort of external, then it would be really easy to sort of just like string them up and have like this X be the shared to that one and blah, blah, blah. And it would also make it a lot more visually easy to see how timing columns work, right? Because when you're working with synced layers, there is a hierarchy to it. Like there are, when you sync when you sync a whole bunch of drawing layers together, one of them is the parent and the rest of them are the children. And that's all well and good if you remember which is which. If you have like teeth, tongue, and things like, and the jaw all parented to mouth, like that's a pretty obvious one. But I've definitely seen scenarios where people have daisy chained their synced drawing layers and gone mouth synced to teeth, and the teeth is synced to the tongue, and the tongue is synced to the jaw. And unsyncing that later was a nightmare because there was no visual cue on being able to tell what was parented to what. Whereas if things are sort of separated in a dumb way like this, you can sort of see like, oh, okay, here's like, you know, a drawing clone where it's like, okay, they're accessing the same library, but it's clear that there's two different timing columns working the both. And then you've got synced layers where it's like, okay, here is one timing column that is being shared across both of these drawing elements that have different substitution libraries. But it's clear that the timing column is parented to this one and not that one, even though it sort of shares. I don't know if it actually works like that. I don't know. Chris hasn't said anything in a while, so I don't even know if you're still here. I don't know if it actually works like this in the back end, but it was just a thought that like, oh, I wish I could see it like that. That would be really, really useful to be able to like whip a timing column around like that. Anyway, then it got a little bit crazy where I was just like, oh, well, if you had Bezier function sharing like that, then you could start throwing in your expression columns and things. But then you might as well have little operator nodes that go in the middle. Silly things like that are like the expressions, but little modulated components of them. So, you know, like here, you know, take current frame -1, that kind of thing. I feel like this is pretty well redundant already because since I drew this, the retiming suite became a thing. So like, you know, before then I was retiming stuff on a function by function level, and which was pretty crazy. So being able to put a retiming node like offset -1 underneath an entire rig is like a godsend. Like that changed my life. So I don't know, there's probably a bit of a fool's errand now, but you know, I don't know. I got a little carried away with sort of thinking about it, but anyway, okay, yeah, back on task. So this is pretty much all for everyone. Redirecting my attention back to people who are here to learn about weight deformers. This is how the line weight goes. pretty simple setup, goes around in a loop, rigid single lines, and you can have a closed loop by having the beginning be the first node and the end node. I think that's a really simple setup, really easy to understand. But because we are still working with pegs, we can have a crazy amount of control over these things. Like I was saying before, I can parent two pegs together. I can put springs and constraints in there. I could have, like a regular deformation chain going on. Part of this could be a linear and part of it could be round. It's nuts. So this brings us to the grand finale, which is the curve deformer. The curve weight. The curve weight is a whole new universe in of itself. So I'm going to need to slow down a little bit to slowly explain this. So take a breath, take a drink of water or whatever, and then we'll get into it. And then we will jump into it, as I have just done. For anyone else watching, if there's any questions about anything so far, please throw them in there. Chris, if you're still watching, say something so I know that you saw that huge rant and it wasn't just to a wall. Okay. Okay. So weighted curve. So this one starts off. This is a doozy. I'm going to demonstrate this on a just sort of over here to start with. I think I'm going to have a empty drawing. So the way a regular curve deformer works is actually a little bit more involved than most of us expect. Okay. So when we draw some curve deformers, a lot of the time we expect that that I think most people think it's this. It's like the point with the two handles sticking out either side, but that's not actually the case. When you create a curve, what you're really doing is creating this. It's the 2 points with the connection point and the two handles. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's how it goes. Chris will correct me. But if I was to show that on a regular envelope, sort of just making it here, you'll see that if I do one like this, oopsie daisy, get rid of that. We get the point coming out the back here, but I can't really do anything with it yet. It does follow along, but it's when I create a new point here that sort of like this line gets created, and the curve sort of connects the whole set. And that's sort of what the curve weight does. We are constructing these 4 points manually. That's what we're about to do. 1, 2, 3, 4. The curve weight needs to take all 4 inputs. No more, no less. It's a little confusing, so let's give it a go. First, we need the weighted regular weight deformer to ground the system. Pegged, set it up. There we go. And then we create our first weighted curve like this. And 4 dummy pegs. If I was being sensible, I would probably name them, because this is going to get pretty dicey pretty quickly. I'm going to parent them later. Let's just get the foundations going, okay? So watch what happens when I put all 4 of these in. And we turn on controls. See, they're all in a point at the moment. And I'm going to move out their pivots like this. Oh, hang on. I'm going to go for the circle shape again, okay? So that the point number 1 is the handle, I think. Point number 2, no, it's the other way around, sorry. Point number 1 is the point itself. So that goes there. And you can see as I move point number 2, it's actually moving where the handle rests, like this. Point number 3 will move the second handle. And then point number 4 moves the actual point. So look at that. It's very, very manual. You can't just sort of throw it together. It's, yeah, and then you're sort of moving the pivots around to do it. And I guess, yeah, now that you mention it, this is why you can now set pivots by slapping down tab. Oh, hang on, no, it didn't work for me. Because it was only moving the temporary pivot around. Or is it control tab or something? I'm missing a piece. Oh well, I'm going to do it the classic way for now, just for argument's sake. All right, so there you go. There is our first curve deformer. So this is a pretty involved setup, especially if you've got a complex shape going on. But it's worth it in the end. So now, here we go. Buckle up. Second set. Pin that in. Ground it with the main peg. And then start moving the pivots around. Oh, hang on. Make these show up. So this handle goes... Wait, that's the actual peg. So I'm still getting used to the order of operations here. So that handle goes there. And now, this is where we get to the first caveat, right? Because remember what we learned with the line weight is how things get shared from point to point. So this is the solution that they've come up with on how to link curve deformers, curve weights together. Because each of these is two independent systems. So if I want these to be parented and follow along with each other, heck, if I want it to be literally the same point, you know, how the regular envelopes work, what do? Well, I just share it. So this peg here is parented to both, like that. And there we go. So now we have half of our circle constructed. So I don't need that one. And we follow along like that. So even though there's only 3 sort of dedicated pegs for this deformer, it still takes the 4 inputs, just as it did. So third set, I'm going to create another one. I'm duplicating, by the way, so nothing is cloned or shared. Show controls for those. So I move some of these pivots around just so I can see what I'm doing. Come on. Oh, uh-oh. Not everything's showing up anymore. Oh, it's because I haven't got the... You need to have all 4. All 4 need to be plugged in before you see anything. Whoopsie. That over there. This handle faces down. This one faces that way. And like at the moment, it looks like it's still relatively manual in order to get these flat and even. There's probably a smarter way to do it that I haven't figured out yet. But there we go. And now you could just use the same weight curve and add more points after the first 4. Really? Ah, I've been overcomplicating it. Let's try it for this set then. So if I was to go like this, go 1, 2, 3. I could have sworn in my experiments that it maxed out at 4. Oh, look at that. Okay, that's a lot easier. So it is just this huge line. Okay, sweet. All right. Oh, we're learning a ton. Okay. So wait, oh no, I've confused myself a little bit though. What on earth? Is that a handle parented to the next handle? That doesn't seem right. Oh wait, hang on. That's because you need to go there. You're there. That there. And this one here. Okay. So now there's basically going to be a cleanup pass of getting everything lined up properly. Okay, so I'm going to... Well, I almost feel like having the different weight curves in there is beneficial just for the sake of being able to read it. Because with I'm going to start... Although I suppose once I parent it properly, then it will be okay. Alright, so that means this first one also needs to be at the very, very back. That's busted something though. Hang on, you let go. No, there we go, that's connected. But curiously, this is a dotted line now, rather than it being solid. I'm a little bit curious why. So why don't I color the pegs? That's a good idea. Hang on, I'm going to make a duplicate and put this over here. And experiment with this more correct approach of having absolutely everything on one big weight curve and see what that does. So that there, that unhook, that there, that there, that there. And then let's see if we can't get these parented well. Okay, so yeah, so that works, but I'm curious as to why only the final portion appears to be solid. I'm guessing, is it because that this was originally conceived just for regular curves and was like, is making envelopes out of it a bit overdoing it? Because my assumption was, and what I'm going to be doing later is combining this with master controllers, because then you can have proper stacked hierarchy. Because you can only really have a deformer parented to one control reliably. Like if you wanted to have what I'm going to be doing is having a head turn modulate and having a mouth that can complement that. So it's a deformer-based mouth that has all of its poses, but it also has distinctive angles for each portion of the head, which you can't do with a classic envelope, but I'm expecting is possible with this. And we'll see how it goes down. All right, so 1, 2... let's, by parenting all of these, because each handle and each subpoint is its own sort of curved deformer, we can make this a little bit more traditional by parenting them accordingly. So that would be this one, and ironically this one. that, and that. And then I think after that it should be a little bit more straightforward, where it's 1, 2, 3. Did I get that right? And then 1, 2, 3, like that, and 1, 2, 3. Cool. All right, that's pretty straightforward actually. I probably should have used a duplicate peg, or if I was actually smart about it, I probably could have just done this, which is I think what I will actually do right now. Have it parented like that, because there's not really too much occasion I can think of where you would want to move the main handle, the main controller point, and leave the handles behind. It's cool that it's an option, I suppose, but not all that necessary. Okay, and wait, was that it? That's not right. There. Cool. Oh, sorry. Is my stream dropping out? I'm seeing some glitches on my end. Okay. All right, so you can see what I mean. Efficiency versus control. Things are getting relatively complicated compared to the freeform deformer, which was just like bang, 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 bang. This one is a relatively similar approach, but oh my goodness, did that take a little while to set up. And I'm going to be setting it up a couple of different ways, because I want to show the way that I set it up the first time I did this, but I am assuming that is incorrect and undesirable, so I probably won't do it that way again. All right, there is our 4 points of the weighted curve. Pretty crazy, all of that just for a circle. So that's why I am, I don't know if expecting is the right word, but I have a feeling that once this is a little bit more understood and in use by the community, we're going to see an option that you can sort of just punch things in with the regular envelope, and then there'll be a button up here that will be like convert to weight curve, and it will just print it into pegs like this in a very similar way that we have the create new deformation chain button. Like that is a lot of, like, you can just build the transformation node directly from raw nodes, and I do that sometimes to demonstrate to people how the back-end core mechanics of the program works. I think it is important to understand how the transformation switch works in that way. Like if you've built it by hand with nodes before, then you're you're a lot better at troubleshooting. You know how to get out of different, sticky jams and stuff like that. But my God, is it nice that button exists and it just creates the transformation switch for you. Puts it in a group, names it accordingly. We couldn't live without it. All right, so the way I'm expecting to see this go down on the ground when this hits production lines is something like this, where we'll probably see each curve point sort of like backdrops. Maybe they'll even be grouped accordingly so that it can look more like a regular so it can look more like a regular set. No, I'll use backdrops. All right, so now this should function. Oh, hang on, I've busted something. Did I arrange that in the wrong order? Which one is that? That's these three. What have I done there? Oh, that's not that one. This one. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Yeah, so middle ones can be grabbed. That will pick up the whole unit. Oh, that's interesting. Did I make that one the... Oh, I made that the wrong parent for that one. Still works just the same. But that's kind of funny. We'll correct this by putting in a dummy and going unhooking that, going U and U, and put that there, get rid of that, rearrange. Cool. All right, all better. All right. Now, it's probably worth pointing out that we have almost gone full circle back to regular envelopes here, because the textures are not playing quite as well as they were before. The line deformer, I was quite surprised to see that it almost busted it again entirely. So unless there's something that I'm missing in how that system works, it is more about having more control over about how edges run again, rather than having internal control. Because it sure is nice being able to get that amount of bone edges, but like, yeah, look at that middle, so keep that in mind. Whereas over here, it kind of depends. It plays better, but I'm not sure if it's the intended purpose, because you can sort of see how it really pinches that singular point there. Now, I think the weighted curve, just like everything else, has the zone of influence, so we can pump up that maximum distance again, like so. Oh gee, it's 5 is a lot. Or we could probably even try combining it with the drawing deform, which we'll get to in a bit. Maybe we'll cover that before we move on. But I think this system, though, I have a feeling it may change the way that we go about it, like in the coming years. It's probably not quite ready yet, because, like I say, it's still very labor intensive to set up. I'm sure it's more CPU intensive as well, but the amount of extra control we get is just ridiculous. The fact that now the exact functionality of an envelope deformer is split up amongst all of these pegs. The fact that I can get into each one of these and share its data around and parent it off different things is insane. It's insane. There is so much that we can do with this. So consider again all of the examples that I've talked about up until this point, where you can have different parents sort of come into here and also have it parent off into different areas as well. So going back to Leung's examples, where here we have a very similar setup of a weighted point. This should make a little bit more sense to everyone now, where we have weighted points going along. Oh, it's not showing up for me. Is it because it's probably because I've got springs in there, and springs don't like to show their points sometimes. Anyway, so I can show you with the regular pivots how this just has a series of points going all the way along the bottom. And then by combining that with the constraint system, we get some incredibly powerful effects where each one, every second one will follow along with a bit of inertia, But then it's gone and daisy chained these secondary points as well. So every one in between that, all of the sort of uppy bits, they will follow even more so, giving a really dynamic and beautiful look. I was absolutely couldn't believe how cool that looked. He's used a weighted drawing here as well, which we'll have another quick look at in a second. All right, yeah, so I'm thrilled that we'll be able to parent these in different ways. So the example that I used in my video yesterday was the fact that I could get something like a shake or a quake node and pull that out. You couldn't do this before. Put a shake into an individual node, like an individual point. That's crazy to me. Hang on. Let's head down there. So there he goes. Look at that. There's the bottom one shaking away. Couldn't do that. There was no way to access that individual point. You could probably do it with expressions and do all sorts of weird stuff like that. But, you know, like I can group them together. I can have this affect 3 out of 4 points and, you know, not all of them. I can have it affect one thing and then throw in a transformation limit and have something be affected 50% as much as something else. It's limitless. The amount of ideas springing to mind is a lot. And maybe we'll experiment with a bit more at the end, depending on how much time there is. Control-Shift-G to group with composite inside. Oh yeah, how did I forget about that? Weird how you play on stuff. And someone suggested coloring the pegs as well. Maybe I should just quickly do that for one of them as well. Look, I've colored some of the pegs. You happy now? There you go. Yeah. All right. I could use the same with the weight curve and just add more points after the first 4. Oh yeah, that's what I did there. So that's a really nice setup. Whereas this alternative setup that I was doing here, where I had one weight curve per point, I guess that you can increase and decrease the region of influence, but that was over-engineered. I didn't know that you could just add more. I don't know how I overlooked that, but this is nice. This is good. All right. One more point to talk about. Fine. I'll color them 4 different colors. Jeez. What, the pegs or the backdrops? Can I just color the backdrops? Can I have a color picker for backdrops, please? That's all I've ever wanted. Yellow and what's complementary? I've done Splatoon colors so far. So what's another Splatoon color? Orange? There we go. Ding, ding. Yeah, so if you're a full-time rigger who has a week to build a guy, go for it. But yeah, I'm not sure if we'll see this fully eclipse regular envelopes just yet. It's very, very cool though. Something I really like about Harmony, and I suppose it's a bit of a catch-22, is that it's very, very good at not straight up eliminating old features. I do believe it's probably time to hide some old stuff. Like I have students all the time who are encountering, like they open it up and the first thing they see is like, oh, inverse kinematics, fantastic. And then just like go down a whole rabbit hole. And it's like, guys, we haven't used inverse kinematics as like a mainstream rigging and animation method in like over 10 years. But it's still front and center next to the transform tool. So it's a little bit misleading. I'm glad it's there, that it hasn't been outright deleted. I think there's going to be some really cool ways to be able to combine it with these brand new systems. Like I remember a couple of years ago, I think I combined weighted deforms with glue or something crazy like that. And being able to combine those 2 generations together was really fascinating. I'm so curious to see if this is going to completely upend the meta or not. Anyway, let's put it into practice, shall we? And head on over to my onion rig, where I'm going to reconstruct the mouth with this new system. So this is a very unconventional rig. Every time I open this up and show it to the audience, I need to express that if you're on production, you would not build something like this. Master controllers, as I understand them, are are essentially a fancy pose copier, and they should be treated as such. Hang on, where is it? Where am I master controller set? There we go. Where you sort of have a library of poses set up on the timeline, sort of like this. And then when you're doing a blocking phase, you can just sort of go grab particular poses that you want, and that will get you like 80% of the way there. And then you're using the traditional tool set to animate things professionally. It's pretty rare that a master controller set is intended or indeed able to do the entire animation pass for you. When you try to make that happen, it makes rigs so unbelievably complex that you frankly might as well build it in 3D. Like, some of those 2D rigs are more complicated than a 3D counterpart, especially when you're doing the full 360 turnaround shenanigans. Now, the main issue with that is that they become just like really maintenance heavy. The main advantage we have with 2D as a medium is that nothing will ever have as much control as just being able to draw something. You just get it straight from your head when it's out. Like, when the rig starts to break down, you just lop off the arm, you draw a fresh one, hooray. Like, do a smear frame for 2 frames, whatever. Like, they're folding their arms, can't be bothered to pose it, whatever. Just lop it off, just draw another one. So there's absolutely a bell curve there where it's faster to just draw it, and I think we should be embracing that as an industry. And some of these more complex ones, like, yes, they can do a lot very, very quickly. They are very, very efficient. But once again, you have very little control over them. Once they reach a point that they were not explicitly built to be able to handle, the entire thing just breaks. And being able to just rewire it on the fly and build new drawings in and build new angles in and things like that becomes exceptionally difficult. And that's exactly what this onion is. So I get away with it here because I built this guy myself. And I use him myself, and his purpose is exceptionally tailored. He is made to present YouTube videos, and that's it, right? So I can animate this guy entirely with the master controllers, pretty much. So he's got like a certain range of poses there. He's got the blink, and he's got a little bit of eye movement. And I've been a bit naughty and made a master controller mouth set. I know I probably shouldn't do that. Drawing substitution is still off on the way to go with sync delays and stuff. But that's fine for this, like, because all this character ever needs to do is just look at the camera and gesture around a little bit. He never needs to turn all the way around. I'm never going to get a weird storyboard that I'm not expecting where he's doing backflips and crazy stuff, and I need to somehow push the rig in order to be able to do that. So I know what the limitations of this guy is, and I work according to that. I've tried to push it even further than that in the efficiency department, because like I can get about about 30 to 60 seconds out in an hour, which, pretty good. And I reckon I could probably get it even further if I were to practice combining moving this controller handle around with capture motion, which I have been able to get running once or twice. It's been really finicky and it breaks a lot. But I was really proud of that, where I was able to like puppeteer my stylus on the page live to audio as I was hearing it. And then I cut and paste that peg movement into the master controller handle, and then used the who was it that built them? Yuta? I haven't got it installed in this version. The master controller plugin that will analyze all of the keyframes that already exist and like interpolation of a master controller movement, and then turn it into actual gestural movement. And that was just like, yes. I was able to get like a minute out and a minute of footage out in 1 minute, and it was amazing. Anyway, so a couple of interesting things going on with this rig that makes it possible, and what a lot of people don't understand about master controllers is that every parameter can only be pinned to a controller handle once. Okay, so when it comes like one of the things that got me excited about master controllers when they first got invented, that I was a little thrown by when it turned out not to be the case, was being able to combine movements. What I really wanted to be able to do was to have an up downy head, a left righty head, and then it would sort of just be able to figure out the diagonals, because you would combine 2 different handles together. And it turned out that that wasn't really the case. The way it actually works is that you would sort of just you would have to plan out all of the combinations, because you couldn't really mix and match things too much like that, right? An example of this was the eyelids. At least in this case is the eyelids. So check this out. I've got a handle that does one eyelid, and I can sort of move that around to sort of do each eyelid, and then towards the middle we'll do both. And then I've got a master handle in the middle that does both. Now, pay attention here, as you'll notice that when I pose one of the eyes, and then when I grab this handle in the middle, that it will snap, right? It sort of just jumps to the new pose. That I can't really combine it, right? So I can't really like put this like this and then move this one down and have it sort of like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't really combine those movements. Meanwhile, I was able to combine the movements on the pupils, and I'll be able to show you how. So check this out. Here is the pupil movement, so I can move that around and have it look up and to the right. And then when I move the body, you see that the eyes remain looking to the top right according to the rest of the body. It looks like it should be doing that. Like it seems simple when it's running, but like when it didn't work, when I would grab this body piece, the eyes would always snap to looking straight ahead every time, just like the eyelids were. They would reset as soon as I grabbed the body. But I managed to get them to stack like this. And the solution is relatively simple. You basically just need to have dedicated pegs for each controller handle. So if we go have a look at the eyes here, you can see I've got these pegs respect the body. They follow along when I move this handle around. And then I have a secondary set of, wait, no, sorry, it's these ones here. These pupils will follow the body. And these pegs, so you can see the hierarchy is identical. It's not branching out, it's not doing anything else. It's just two pegs that would do the same thing. So in a traditional rig, you wouldn't do this. This would be bad practice to have two pegs that do the same thing. That confuses an animator. Because when I press B, nothing's happening. I'm just going up to the same thing. But in this case, I needed to have two. Whereas this one is explicitly controlling the pupil control. And I've got the same thing going on in the hands here. Whereas I've got hand left MC, hand left master controller. So these hands will follow the body around wherever he may go, but I've got a secondary set of pegs where I can, hand left manual. So this will allow me to pick it up and animate it around manually. So I can place it up here and it will follow along with the body in that position. Whereas if I try to use master, again, same chain, not branching off. If I moved this one down here and then I tried to move it, oh, I didn't do it that time. It should have snapped back. What did I do wrong? Have I got another peg somewhere that's doing that? God, that's embarrassing when my demo breaks down. Okay, maybe the hands weren't set up to work that way. Whatever. Maybe I can do it for the eye and demonstrate it like that. We'll push that one in, and then when I move this body, I'm expecting it to snap to the left. There we go. That's what I was going. Yeah, so that snapped back to the left. Hooray. All right, so that's all well and good if you're able to stack things with pegs, because that's how pegs work. You can stack them together and it's all good. But it doesn't work if you need to stack deformers, which was the case for the mouth. So the mouth has all this animation going on. Let's go inside here. Oh, I end up deleting it from the main mouth. I'll open up an old version so you can see what it looks like. So here's this old mouth, right? Eventually we get to all the different mouth poses, whatever. Hang on, I should probably turn deformers on for this so you can see how it's set up. There we go. So deformer based mouth down here, so you can see it sort of cycling between all the different poses, and it has a happy and sad version, hooray hurrah. But as I move the body around, it's flat. It's always going to be the same. I was able to get a little bit of depth simulation by having the tongue on a peg. So that has a little bit of a delay as it moves around, as you can see there. But what I really wanted to happen was to have the mouth itself, like we're actually looking up at it. Like you'd start to see a little bit of the teeth showing up if we're looking at him from below, and vice versa and things like that. I think I ended up turning the teeth off because it was a little bit of a, it just didn't really work out. Okay, no, we've got a bit of a delay there, but it wasn't warping. It was just, anyway. Now, I got it working a bit in Harmony 20, back when this was the first thing. And I want to show you how it breaks before I dive into trying to recreate it. Dachi says, absolutely, we should embrace the quirks of 2D. 3D will be taking over a lot of the animation industry. I mean, it's not. AI might. But if 3D was going to take over everything, it would have happened by now. Especially because 3D stuff still needs to do roughs by hand a lot of the time. Nothing has more control than drawing. And a lot of time drawing is faster as well. That's why storyboards are done the way that they are. You know, like yeah, I know that frame by frame feels like a slog sometimes, but like honestly, it's not that slow. Like when you get into like proper hybrid and high tier rig animation, like you spend an hour and a half posing the first keyframe. Like it takes a fraction of that time to clean up your first keyframe. The benefit is a return on investment. It's when you start animating lots of stuff. So like when you got your first blocking pose done, animating the rest of the scene is going to be a lot quicker because you got that first pose there. Whereas that's going to become a huge grind if you have to clean up the whole thing. And rigs like that are a thing as a whole. Like I have to say this to like university teachers all the time, is that unfortunately the tool set in Harmony, at least, that is useful to industry workers is different to the tool set that is useful to students, ironically enough. Because if you're building a high tier rig that takes like a week and a half to build, that's totally worth it if you are making a 50 episode series with that character, right? But if you're making a 2-minute graduation short film, you're probably overdoing it. You might be better off going with something a little bit more simple. Yes, so it's interesting that. Whereas, you know, some of those same tools that are about getting a fast result, that's not so fast when you need to do it. You know, if it's a fast result for just 2 minutes, sure, but if you got to do it for 50 episodes, yeah, it's not so fast no more. Okay, let's see. I've got some old backups of this onion rig. I'm trying to find one that still has the old mouth in there, because eventually I just ripped it out because it was just causing me problems and I couldn't be bothered. And I'm really excited because Harmony 22 is here and I can fix it. All right. Oh, wow. This is an old version. It's before everything was tidy and it had backdrops. But I think it's... No, it's not there. Oh, well. All right. Get rid of you. Go back to Harmony 22 again. Sorry. We'll be there in a second, I promise. Get this rebuilt. Then we'll have a break. And then we'll do some experiments together. Sorry, this is embarrassing. These are the trial versions still. I didn't mean for that to come up. I'm make sure. Is it in the 22 version? That can't be right. Did I delete it from my working file version? I actually have an old video from about 1.5 years ago where I demonstrated how this thing was busted, so I might send that to Chris privately afterwards, just so you can sort of see what was happening back in the day, and maybe you know what was going on in the back end of the system, because I actually managed to get it working in a relatively decent way, but it would break on render, weirdly enough. Old weight peg. Okay, and that's empty. Yeah, I think I've lost it. I think it's gone. Yeah, that says old weight. There was a whole set of there was a group peg in here, right? And inside there was a weight deformer consisting of 9 pegs that were laid out much like an envelope. So it was like point, like in a ring around the mouth, and they were positioned around the different angles to try and. Man, I really want to find it. It's important. It's important for the demos. Okay. Scan rig. Mask control build. Where's he gone? Maybe it wasn't that one that I just had. Is it in the one we're currently looking at? Could it be? What's this one? 22. Nope, not in that one. And this one's broken too, because I moved the envelopes to a different location like an idiot. this is the one we're working on, I think. Oh! Deformation butt. Why is it called that? Oh, it's for his butt. His actual butt. Yeah, no, it's gone. It's gone. Really? From every version? I refuse to accept this reality. It's got to be in this old one. Alright. How many 21 don't fail me now? Has anyone been following along with some of these steps and experiments, by the way? I'd be curious. If you're watching this video later, and as like an actual tutorial, well done. Following along with all my tangents. Yeah, it's gone. Whatever. Okay. Back to it. So, well, I'm going to build it again with curve weights, and let's see how it goes. So, practical example. I am going to go out to a later frame around here and set the pose to, well, nothing actually. So, OK to select everything, keyframe, and go animation reset. Oh wait, no, hang on. These are deformers, aren't they? Reset the deformers. There we go. So everything is sitting neutral, and so should their pegs. And just to confirm, because I haven't looked at this guy in a year, that all of the parts are exactly where they indeed are. Yep. Okay. So I want to take this mouth and build a secondary envelope set around the edges that kind of mimics what was there. So you can see we've got these points, and in a ideal world, if this was being built from scratch, I'm thinking that I could have 2 sets of pegs. So I'm wondering if I should consider reconstructing all of the mouth poses as well, and copy and paste their translations in. So maybe we'll give that a quick go, just as like an experiment, just to see if this theory is even plausible. And it'll give everyone a bit of a use case as to how this could impact the industry at large if it works, because I think it's pretty cool. And it's still early days. So we need a weighted curve, and we need a weighted deform. Ground it there. I think it already has a peg at the surface level, but that's okay. I'll put one here, even if it's temporary. And we need how many points? 1, 2. Wait, how many did this one have? It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. I'm gonna count them. Put them in the right spot. Okay, so top, bottom, corners, and middle. All right, that's easy. I can do that. Get out of here. Storage for later. Oh no! Oh no! Is that what happened when it was disconnected? Whoa! Oh, that's because it's not attached to anything. Okay, yeah. Oh my god, I nearly died. Okay, so 1 for the top, and then, oops. Corner, side, bottom, other side, top corner, and then loops back to the top again. Sweet. All right. So that's going to be our main setup. Spread these out a bit because I need to make new pegs for their handles underneath, so we can see how laborious this still is until we get a shortcut for it. All right, so 2 pegs representing the 2 handles sitting underneath each one. Sort of pack them like that, why not? And duplicate each one. Oh wow, we really need to spread this out. Really need to spread them out. Yeah. So yeah, I hope this is also clear on how this method is likely to be more useful on particular rig types rather than like people always ask like, how do you rig? Like that's sort of just like a blanket statement, and it's like, guys, you can there's as many ways to rig as there is ways to draw. It's an art form. It's infinite. And it depends on what kind of production you're working on, how your animators like to work. A huge amount of factors go into deciding how something should be built. And we've seen a really large growing trend in the recent years of clients wanting their shows, or like showrunners wanting their shows, to look as hand-drawn and traditional as possible. So that means we've been leaning into a relatively hybrid method a lot of the time. So sometimes that's just using envelope rigs. So they're pretty involved characters, but everything is just using envelopes. There's just like molding blobs of clay. And you sort of rough it by hand, and then you sort of mold around that. I think that's how Mercury does a lot of their stuff. And then you've got like full hybrid, where you've got rigs that are simple enough that you sort of lop bits off and redraw parts all the time. And ones like this, where they are really dynamic and they can sort of look hand-drawn because they're so malleable. This is more likely to appear in shows where it's okay for things to look puppety sometimes. Because although the movements that they can do looks fantastic, they're always going to hit certain limitations. There's no way that a rigger can build in absolutely every single edge case. You start building in all these extra little bells and whistles to handle every weird thing that can, every limitation that it can make. And it's a lot of time it's just not necessary. So like I can see it really working on this sort of method really working for like preschooler content, like Bluey or something like that would probably look amazing with these types of rigs. Anyway, where did my weighted curve go? So let's see if I can remember how all this needs to be strung together. It is main controller first, both handles, and then next controller, and then both handles. Is that right? I think that's right. We can rewire it if I get it wrong. So main control, handle, control, handle, control, handle. Are we having fun? Some top tier entertainment. Control, handle. Ground it to the weight, and then parent it to all of this in order. Show controls, and then we get to the grind of parenting everything. Yay! You go there. Hang on, let's get all this other junk out of the way. Oh, wow. Okay, so this was from a time when rather than using weights at all, you would get rid of collapsing envelopes by doing an outer mask. I forgot about that. That was ages ago. All right, hang on. Don't need that right now. Layer properties for drawing. Drawing layer, underlay, off. Yeah, don't need that right now. Come to think of it, I probably could have set the pivots up for the two handles first, and then they would already be in the correct spot because their pivot would be dependent on the location of their parent peg. So maybe this system is very templatable after all. And if this can be combined with that tab pivot that Chris mentioned before, then that would be great. But so far the tab pivot has only been working for me on the transform tool, not the rotate tool. All right, so there's all the pegs. Now I got to grind out doing all the handles. But I have a feeling I'm not getting quite all of the handles correct. Yeah, I'm going to have some errors here. This doesn't seem to be landing in quite the order. The translate tool, yeah, okay, shut up. No, it's called transform. What are you talking about? Look. Which one's the translate tool? Oh my god. Oh, I've stuffed this up big time. Oh, I got the order so wrong. How disappointing. Seriously? Hang on, I can save this. It's kind of funny though. It's like I'm building a tent. It'll come out with practice. Chris, I imagine this is like watching like someone play test a game. It just must be infuriating seeing me do like press the wrong buttons and be like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Look at me doing a stream teaching everyone else and like completely blowing it. I'll use the translate tab to move pivots. Oh, right, that one. Well, wait, wait. Oh, wait. Oh, that works with... Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, did you know that in the official Toon Boom course material for the Harmony Foundations course and the rigging course, the step pointed out is to use the rotation tool to set your pivots. I believe because it has this like big, heavy hierarchy, so it's like to make it easier to see. So that's why most of us have the habit of using that rather than the translate tool. So yeah, I don't know if it should be worth considering to add the tab button to the other variants as well. Oh god, what have I done? Holy crap. Did I get the order wrong? I don't think I got it wrong. And yet. Okay, well at least now I know that I can press tab. Oh dear. Okay, so that last one, they're all handles? They're all handles? Oh yeah, okay, that last one, that makes sense. Alright, so that needs to be there. So does that mean it goes... I'm certain that that should have been... That's empty. That's very weird that that's empty. That shouldn't be empty. Am I missing... I might be missing one. Hang on, let me rearrange that. No. That piece there, that's also empty. And that's the first piece? That doesn't seem right. Oh, no wonder everything's messed up. I think I've got the wrong number of pegs in there. Hang on. If one more appeared at the start... Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I had one too few. And now it's appearing exactly where I want it to. So I guess I'm going to put that back and trust my instincts that I had it right. And, of course, it's stuffing up because I didn't complete the circuit. I was going to do that at the end, but I should have done it at the start. Because if it has one less peg, then the whole order messes up. So it's a little bit more complicated than your standard composite. I need to complete the circuit by having the very first one also be the very last one, and now there is an even number of curves, and I can trust my instincts that I had it right all along. Oh, yes. Okay, cool. All right. I feel a little less stupid now. I'll get used to it. I still think this is going to be a powerful system. Okay, and thankfully, yeah, man, this new tab system is actually really handy. Thank you for suggesting it. You can see it already affecting the curve there, which is cool. Ding, 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 ding. And yeah, I have a feeling that if I had set them up from the start, then it would have... Hang on. Hang on. What am I doing? If I am doing this properly, I should be respecting proper Bezier structure, right? And try and keep these suckers straight. Whoops. Okay, so apparently tabbing that doesn't bring the handles along for the ride, so they have to be done by hand. That's okay. I can live with that. we go. Yeah, besides rotate the top. The rotation tool for pivots is just superstition and an old version behavior. If you think of it from the left to the right, it's a bit easier to work out. Yeah, right to left. The first point on a multiport node is actually the rightmost one. Yes, of course, yeah, because you're working from the bottom to the top. That makes sense. Oh yeah, because the image switch, that's how the image switch works. Port 0 is on the right. It's a pretty clear example. And, oh, what was I going to say? I've forgotten. Whatever. Alright, I'm going to get the basics of these handles into a rough position before I go too crazy getting it clean. Hang on. That's not right. One of those handles is missing. I'll find it. Bit of detective work. Some of these are parented wrong. So that one is correct. But that handle should be parented to you. I think I've gotten all the parenting messed up actually. Because yeah, you should be parented to here. You should be parented to here. You are parented to here. Wait. Ah, there you are. Yeah, so you're there. Oh, it's like a little detective game. Hang on. Let's start from the bottom. Just the correct way to do it. So this, and this. They live together. They're a set. They're happy. That one, and that one. Okay. They're happy. This one, that one, and that one. They're happy. This one, and this one. Okay. And that's where I was stuffing up. They're back to front. There we go. Get them more or less straight. This one. All right, cool. I think I'm done. So the angle of the pivots and stuff could be a little bit tidier. So it's definitely a bit of a chore to sort of set up all those pivots by hand. So if we ever end up getting that convert to weighted curve button, that's going to really turn this from being an experiment into something we actually use. I think is probably a little bit too cumbersome to set up. Like I respect we'll probably get there with practice, but like, is it something that we should need to practice? I don't know. Because like we're all very used to that. And I don't know, we're probably being a bit greedy, but like I think we're all a bit used to just being able to slap things down like any other Bezier control now. Building them point by point and setting them up like that is it's pretty full on. Similarly, I guess while I'm talking about it, I noticed that the shading, the shape shades are sort of similar deal. How you gotta like build those point by point in the node library, rather than being able to just slap them down like any sort of regular curve deformer. I'm sure there's a reason for it in the back end, but I've always been a little bit confused as to why the inputs for the volume objects and stuff that use these shape tools can't just take curve deformer as an input. Is it kind of a similar result? Like maybe now that these new weight things are a thing, maybe I don't know, maybe a similar solution can be made for volume objects, because like yeah, I'm sure there was a reason for it though. There's no like you probably thought of it and then hit some weird roadblock and had to go your way out of it. Okay, now time to start experimenting with how this is going to go down in the master controllers by having stacked movement. So we'll have one set of pegs, which will be these, and they can be used for lip syncing and posing the positions around. And then there can be another set of pegs on top that can be for controlling the individual deformation of how the mouth moves around the head. And I think that's going to be very, very cool. And if I'm very lucky, what I'll probably actually end up using outside of this experiment is some kind of combination where I have the... I don't know if this will work, but having the deformation of the curve happen and then the curve underneath. I wonder if we can experiment with it right now while it's all here, because this is sort of the equivalent of what I had in the Harmony 20 version, and it worked in working view, and then when I rendered it, it switched off. It couldn't handle it then. Two deformers happening on top of one another was a little bit much, and I can respect that. So if I get in here, yeah, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to combine both. Those weights are being ignored. Meanwhile, if I grab this one, is it going to crash? No, okay, good. All right, yeah, so those work, and the envelope gets ignored. Now, last little experiment I'll try before doing it properly is what if the weight happened first? I just want to see what happens. Nothing. I can't even access the curve anymore. Yeah. I mean, if I had like a kinematic output perhaps, but I don't really see why that would work. Yeah. No, all good. All good. So I guess you got to choose between one or the other, perhaps. But that's okay. Because like I say, this is for a type of rigging method where you don't really need to go in and build stuff on top. It's all going to be about making sets of controllers that can work with one another and complement one another. So I'm going to select all of these pegs, Shift Control P, make another set, and we'll stack them in, and then we'll make one set do a little bit of lip syncing and one set do a little bit of head rotation. Combine them onto two separate controllers, and we'll see what we end up with. Bad Username asks, hey Onionskin, I know your video on it was years ago, but would you still recommend Toons Premium, and does it have the tools necessary to create Mercury Filmworks-esque animation? I'm not the person to ask, I'm afraid. I haven't used Toons Premium a whole lot at all. My main experience is in Toon because it is the industry standard, so it's what I'm using every day already. I do sometimes experiment and mess around with other programs for fun in free time, but I just don't really have the luxury of getting to know them really in depth because I don't get to use them to, you know, pay the rent. I could stack them, says Chris, with the curve above it. If you use the PKO fit, yeah, that's what I tried. If you use a point kinematic output for each peg being controlled. Oh, okay, but I feel bad for any animator using that daisy chain control. Okay, yeah. I agree. Mixing two systems together like that would be a pain. Tell me though, Chris, what I'm about to do here, you probably know where I'm going with this. Was the feature conceived with this in mind? Or like, was it developed for this purpose explicitly? Oh, by the way, bad username. I know that I'm not sure where OpenToons is at these days and what its relationship is with Toons Premium at the moment, but I know that OpenToons has come a long way since it first came out. Because it's had a ton of contributions, and I think they've got deformers and all sorts of wacky stuff now, but I've not used it in like 5 years. Anyway, So, where's my playhead? Okay. Let's go to these pegs. I'm going to go to selection only mode because I like seeing things all stacked together. And I'm going to create a couple of dummy expressions. I still haven't found an easy way yet to grab these points. I don't think the transform tool does it. Ah! Oh, wait, yes it does. Oh, of course. That's why we were given a donut pivot. It was all part of the plan. Everything works together. It all makes sense. The donut pivot. Yeah, okay, so we've got to double click to get them though. Click once to select, click once again to and deselect, and then click again. So it's a little slower to use, but I suppose if you're combining it with the master controllers, then it's worth it because we're only animating this once for the sake of the setup. We use weighted deforms to get pegs and deforms a bit more in the same world. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really glad that we're on the same wavelength there. I'm so curious to, and I don't know how much you're allowed to say, but like, what was, I guess like some of the specific tests. Also, is this naughty? Like what I'm doing here? Like I was like, oh, I want these points to be closer together. I'll scale them. I think that's naughty. Yeah, that's naughty. I'm squishing the thickness of the line in. That's bad. I won't do that. Sorry. So like I say, the two tests that I've sort of seen so far, or rather like my main theories of what it's going to be used for is really crazy combinations with constraints and crazy combinations with master controllers. I feel like those are the two main benefits. Is that what was it tested with that sort of stuff, or was it sort of like, okay, we got it running, let's see what the community thinks? I feel like there was more to it than that, because like what you're showing me with the weighted point was a pretty specific use case that I probably wouldn't have thought of unless you told me. Okay. Whoa. Okay, so O mouth, and then God, I hope I'm selecting the right ones. Yeah, it is going to the bottom layer, and then this one. Oh, of course. I was keyframing all of the handles only once. So they're all stuck being small now. That's okay. We can live with that. This is all just an experiment. I'll do a sharp smile mouth up here. Might need to turn my edge back on now. Which is kind of funny because like the weighted deform normally eliminates this stuff, but I guess the weighted curve brings it roaring back. All right. And smile, and then let's go up to this set. I'm going to turn these pegs off now. And this, oh boy, okay. Oh yeah, because they're new pegs. They're new pegs, not duplicates. I want them to share the same pivots. That's important. So you guys go up here. Hook all these in. Delete the originals. Turn them on, and then delete keyframes. Hiya. Okay. Now, this time, we are going to be simulating angles. So it's the same shape. I'm going to keep the sort of default pose here. And we're going to be bending it to be looking up or down at the shape. Okay. So I'll turn controls off and turn controls on. Will that work? Okay, so that's given me a slightly different result because these ones aren't translating directly to the shape. But I can still pick them up and move them. Okay, so stacked movement's working. Great. But can I just pick up the points? That doesn't seem to be doing anything. Oh, it moved it on frame 1. That's awkward. I don't want that. Alright, I'll do it by hand. That's okay. There's probably better ways, but all good. So I'll have that go in a bit. So let's see, that goes up. That'll go up quite a bit, I think. That'll go up. That'll go up. And then down here, I'm going to have this one be a little bit more drastic and have it go. So we're like looking like heaps far down at it. So down, 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 down. Like that. So now, just like regular pegs, we should have some form of like stacked movement. And if I tie both of these to different master controllers, we should be able to mix and match them and get the different expressions with the different angles. And then if we expand that to the whole head, this character will be unstoppable. I hope. Kevin says, I'm moving from Animate to Harmony. I have really good understanding of Animate, but Harmony is still a bit more difficult, and the courses are too pricey. Could I understand this app more? Kevin, if you could, in the description, there is a link to my Discord. Go to there and send me a DM. I'm working on something at the moment that is specifically for people who are coming from Animate, who know Animate really well, and they want to come to Harmony. You're a very specific type of student. So I'm working on something specifically for you guys. Send me a private message and I'll give you a bit of a sneak peek as to what that is, because it's not quite finished yet, but you can get in early. And I guess that goes for anyone else who happens to watch this video later who's in that camp. All right, Chris says, consider the influences on the single weighted curve you have. There is a reason to separate into different weighted curves. And that's when you want two influences to work the same drawing points. One weighted curve equals that single curve kind, hands the influence to the closer point. If you add more weighted curves or separate the one envelope into a top bottom, it would then mean those curves would fight for the points and blend better. I think I'm following. It's difficult to sometimes follow the text explanations. I feel like you and I need to do a group session. If you could spare the time one time, I would love to interview on this stuff and do a mutual screen share. That would be rad. But from what I'm understanding, does that mean taking this set and putting it into its own box instead? Might like rather than having this parent down to here, having it be parallel. That sounds interesting. Yeah, let's try that. Duplicate all of this for safety. And put it way off to the side. And then we'll take this slot, put it off to the side, duplicate all of this, and then have this set actually be parallel rather than parented. I think this is what you're getting at. Snip. Here's my stylus. Here it is. Here he is. Either way, I'm very curious to see what will happen when both of these sets sit parallel. Will it bust everything up? Or will it be my new future? Huh, that's curious. Oh, whoops. I see what I did, sorry. Oh no, I've got to restring all this. Wait, does that go to the end? Yeah. And then this goes, oh god, I've forgotten. It goes in the middle one, right? Yeah, okay. So you go in the middle. You go in the middle. You go in the middle. And you go in the middle. Okay. And then all of that comes down into the same weight. So what on earth will happen now? Whoa, cool. Is it working though? It does, I think. It's the same pegs, but the separate top and bottom into separate weight curve influences. So half the pegs are attached to the top weight curve and the other bottom halves are attached to the bottom weight curve. And then top and bottom will blend. So is it like this, or are we talking about having an actual hierarchy to these and like it actually goes like this or something? Oh, actually, maybe that was it. Wait, are we saying that? That can't be right. That can't be right. But we might be onto something. Either way, I feel like I can still feel free to pin this stuff to the master controller at this point, and then we can sort of like experiment with rewiring things and how it influences the behavior. Okay, no, this is super complicated. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I'm sorry that I'm misreading the text explanations. All right, I'm going to set up the master controllers on these ones here, and then we'll get to work with messing with it. So fortunately, I think I can have a slide control for both of these for the time being. And we are going from 330 to 338. And we'll call this, I'll just call it mouth 1 and mouth 2 for now because I'm lazy. Uh-oh, I need to choose the appropriate composite. I always forget to do that step properly. Oh, it's just called composite. Fantastic. Is it? No. Top mouth G composite. Okay. Yeah. Pegs. No, go away, grid wizard. I don't want you today. Slider wizard. 330. 338. Mouth 01. Create. Okay, yeah, that was the correct one. Oh, look at all how many I've made since I've built this guy, and then had to make new ones, and then new ones and new ones and new ones because it kept busting it. Okay, Chris is talking simpler. It's hard on text, but just think one simple curve and one weighted curve for the top. Okay, and the same for the bottom. It's the top and the bottom bit that's getting me. An envelope or more points is not the best approach for the weighted curve. weighted system in general. Oh, I getcha. Yeah, okay. No, it's clicked. It's clicked. I get it. I get it. I'm still gonna set up this system real quick, and then I'll come. Oh shit! I've forgotten which set I built the control on. I understand now. I am sorry. Let me just get this out of the way. Actually, no, sod it. I'll do what you're saying before I forget. Duplicate everything. You go over there. Okay, so you're saying that the system was not built with envelopes in mind. And that explains why it's a dotted line on the most part and a solid line just for one bit. Because it sounds like it's not supposed to be an enclosed loop the whole way. But rather just a simple... Let's ditch all this. Ditch the whole thing. Oh no. Okay, so it was 1, 2, 3, 4 on one curve, and then that goes along the top, and then one along the bottom. I see what you mean. That is so much simpler. Okay, so this and then this, both of them being grounded by one weight to form like so. There we go. Ding ding. I might group some of those with proper pegs later. And the idea here would be let's turn these controls back on. So if I'm understanding this right, it is simply 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, and then on the bottom we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, like, oh jeez. 3, 4. Okay, is this what you were getting at? And then like sort of just trust that the weight can handle everything else. So rather than compensating everything, we just sort of keep it pretty simple. Yeah. Oh, rad. That works. That's cool. I like that a lot. It still seems pretty... Like, could that handle lip syncing? Like, again, I'm probably pushing it by doing this method over here. So if I may, if I'm not making you cringe by doing this, I still want to get this double controller going, just to prove to myself that it'll run. And we've got show control. I'm getting a phone call. It'll have to wait, I'm afraid. I'm live. I think I busted it by moving it off its composite. Whoops, I'll start again. Composite 2. All right, take these pegs and go. Slide wizard 330 380 mouth control 1. Mouth composite 2, isn't it? That one there. Okay, save. Wait, that already exists? You're kidding. Oh, I accidentally changed his name. Mouth composite 2. Okay. Yes. Create. Okay. And that is moving the lip sync one. Now I'll select this lot, create a second set. That goes between the same frame count. Wait, no, that one only goes up to, what is that, 335? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. 335. Mouth, I'll call that mouth tilt, I reckon. Create, composite 2, okay. All right. Moment of truth. Will it blend? Expression O. Tilting down. Hey, it does work. So up and down on an O mouth. I mean, it's crude and nasty, but like the fact that it functions at all. So to smile mouth, up and neutral, up and down. There we go. Let me get that pinned in to the primary system. Then I can turn the masking and the whole character back on, just so that we can have a bit of a look at how it all works together with the underlay and stuff on. Back to the main character. Whoa! How funny. Okay. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to see these controls anymore. Guess I need to do this. Back we go. Man, my nose gets so messy during a work session like this. Alrighty. So, what is this guy doing here? You weren't there before. Anyway. How funny. Okay, cool. So, alright, there's the happy mouth. And we're looking up, and then we're looking down. Cool. All right. So that means this sort of up and down tilt, I would pin to the same controller as the whole head rotation, and then I would automatically be able to tilt the mouth angles to be able to look up and down, which would be really, really fun. And then be able to select the mouths independently of that. Now, I've been a bit turned off since then, the idea of using a master controller to select mouth states. It's not the fastest way to animate when you can just sort of flip through drawing substitutions real quick. But yeah, if I can get that running, get this running with drawing substitutions, they'd be getting a bit. It's an over-engineered solution. There's no denying that. But it's something that myself and a few colleagues have been pulling our hair out for a couple of years, trying to see if we could just get working at all, and now it works. Chris, do you foresee this workflow of being able to create a fully enclosed curve and then stack it like this with a master controller to be viable? Now, when I first saw this, I thought that this system was built to address this specifically. But as soon as you showed me the two mouths, so the two curves, one on top of the other, that were much simpler, I was like, oh, hang on, maybe I was taking this in completely the wrong direction. But yeah, curious. Either way, lots of ways to use this. So many different ways that have been opened up. Top of mouth, bottom mouth works with envelopes, but it isn't nice. Chris goes on to say, I prefer using it as a distinct deformation influences being put together onto a deformation composite. In places it misbehaves, add another influence, but don't go too wild. But he has to go. I'll tune into the VOD. Always good to see how things are used. You could still do that stacked with the two curves. I could do it stacked with the two curves. That's a really good point. I think I might try that out. Thank you for coming along for that, Chris. That was amazing. Really helped me out. Turn this into an actual lesson rather than me just bashing against a wall and hitting a whole lot of snags. But that was the main use case that I really wanted to experiment on with myself. We have about 30 minutes left in our time together today. I'm still yet to demonstrate the drawing weight. I think some people are going to find this very, very useful, probably even more so than there's some other ones, because this is, like I said, this gets pretty complicated, pretty engineered, and it's definitely not for everyone. But for those of you who are into experimenting with nodes and do like rigging processes, I'd be really interested in talking to some of you. Make sure you join the Discord server so we can sort of discuss this kind of thing together. For those of you who are not into it, please don't be too alienated. Like I say, Harmony's big software. There's something for everyone. I leaned into this kind of thing on my channel a lot, and sometimes I worry that people get turned off thinking that you have to use it this way. Not true. Anyway, I'm gonna have a quick bathroom break. I'll be back in a couple of minutes, and I'll show you the weighted drawing, and then there'll be time for questions and other experiments and things like that. So those of you who are in the chat currently, please do throw up any questions that you have or things that you would like to see me try out while we're all here. And then there'll be a little bit of general hangout time at the end as well. So if you have any completely unrelated things that you want to talk about to this, I'm happy to address it. So I'm going to throw up the Patreon roll, which, hang on, there we go. And I'll be back in just a second. Thank you. Thank you for waiting. Now, one more new weight node to go. The drawing weight. And then we will have some time for other experiments. Shrexer says, finally a video worth watching, which heavily implies that most of my regular content is not worth watching. Please explain. And I mean that honestly. If you have valid criticism that would make my stuff more worth watching, I am more than happy to hear it. By golly. I need to do a general update video as well coming up because I think I've uploaded twice this year. So I will, it's going to uptick a little bit because I've just come off a production that lasted a bit over a year, and I've needed to confess to myself that I cannot handle working on production and maintaining a YouTube channel at the same time. Always tried it, but if you scroll back through my upload history, you'll find that there's sporadic gaps that last several months at a time, and you can pretty much guarantee that that's when I was working a job. And then I'll be uploading like every other day for a while, and that is when I didn't have a job. Okay, a drawing deform. This one's really, really cool. So I'm going to head back over to the... Shrexo is new to the channel. Welcome. I hope you're enjoying your stay. Are you an animator? Do you use Harmony? What is your vibe on it all? Anyway, back to Deformer, weighted Deformer. We have here the weighted drawing. This is a fun one, really fascinating piece, right? Because the seasoned node users amongst you will notice that it is kind of back to front to a regular drawing node. It is pretty weird to have something that has a drawing input at the top and a transform output. That's really unusual. So let me show you what it does. I'm gonna have we've got our like wacky grid that we were using before over here, right? And I've got another drawing here. I'm just gonna draw a big old splodgy thing right there. Yeah, now a bigger shape. Yeah. There you go. Rad. Now I'm going to peg this thing. Hang on, I'm gonna do this. Hang on. I'm trying to remember. We need to have, I think it, oh man, I'm blanking. Crap. Weighted deformer. Yeah. you remember those. It's not like it was that long ago. Okay, and then this can go into the weighted deform, like so. And then we'll ground it, as we normally do. So now this lets, oh, hang on, I need to put another weight in on the other side just to have it be pulled by something else, right? Look at that. It uses an input shape as our zone of influence. So every other weight node that we've looked at so far, the curve, the point, everything else, remember that all of those had this sort of region of influence that we had to look at. And you could sort of, like these zones here that would sort of come in and out, right? So rather than using those zones deliberately, you can use a drawing input instead as a dedicated piece. So I'm going to come back to this display and have replace that peg with another drawing splodge over here, like this. And this one is going to be over on the other side. Over on the other side, like that. Oh yeah, both of them need to actually be displayed. I mean, they don't have to be displayed. They could just be zones of influence. Doesn't really matter, right? Maybe what I'll do is, hang on, first see it working. Stretchy stretch. Stretchy stretch. So we've essentially made like a, kind of a 2-point constraint style system, which is pretty cool. But again, being married to regular pegs and stuff, a lot more flexibility. I'm going to slap in a couple of transparencies under these guys so we can see what happens underneath the system as I move it around. So check this out. I'm going to stretch this all the way out. But because it is controlled by its zone, right? So like the zone being where the shape is, watch what happens as I start to erase parts of it like this. See that? Pretty cool. So now we get a really fascinating combination, because not only is this something that you can move around with a peg and be able to customize the shape that pulls and pushes things, but consider combining this with traditional animation. I could have this shape change on a frame by frame level and influence how much it snaps and pulls and things like that. Maybe I'll try that real quick as a little bit of a demo, like see if we can sort of create like a rubber band effect, like this is being stretched out and then it sort of like lets go and snaps back to whence it came. So I'll expand the drawings out for both of these layers like this, and then make a drawing substitution and sort of erase a little bit like this and this, and then do another drawing substitution. Erase a bit more, another drawing substitution, erase a bit more and a bit more. Alright, down one last little bit. Oh, is it gonna snap away? And then yes, empty drawing, it'll snap away. So that's kind of fun. I can control zones of influence with drawing substitutions rather than doing peg movement all the time, and I think that's very cool. So bing. Oh, hang on, that needs to be all the way out here, and then it'll snap back like that, which is really fun. So what if I was to therefore combine that with the little bit of peg movement up here? So that, hang on, let's put that back here. And then on this first one, I'm going to have the it be at the beginning. So it's going to move out as the substitutions change. Saying I'm gonna squish this in a little bit. Bring that down to an exposure of 2 the whole way. Pull that out to here. And then, hang on, give that a little bit more length, and I'll add a relatively heavy ease to the end like this. So it stretches out, and then the shape will start to shrink away, and then it will, there we go, then it just pops back. How fun. Oh, I'm quite happy with that. And of course, because it is the way the node's set up, this doesn't have to be revealed. I can just unhook that. And now we don't see that zone of influence. It just looks like the shape itself is retracting as I remove the artwork from it. Very, very cool. The flexibility is nuts. And I fall into this category now where... because a part of what I do is experiment with these features, and I kind of need to have an understanding of how all they work and how they complement one another for the sake of teaching it. I'll often approach personal animated projects by picking a tool set and then seeing what I can make with it, rather than the other way around, which I imagine most people are not really in the position to be able to do, where you kind of, you probably have an idea on what you want to animate, and then you have to think, oh God, what kind of tool set is the best to use, which can be a little bit overwhelming. So I think it can, so I encourage this mindset, like, try one of these tool sets, like, try plugging into things and see what they do, and think, what kind of little animation can I make that exploits this? And you'll probably find your skills will increase really quickly. JC Animations, old friend of the channel. Hi, Onskin, can't stay for long, but thought I would pop by and say hello. Hello to you too, and I've been enjoying your videos as well. Shrexer says, I hope to animate myself, devouring onions, but please don't bother with me, I'm just trolling. Well, you're making me a little bit tempted to animate you eating some onions right now. Oh yeah, of course, Shrek likes onions. We are a good match. We were meant to be. Shrexer. Okay, that brings me to the end of the tool sets I was hoping to demonstrate today. But for anyone who has stuck around for a decent period of today's stream, you've probably seen that it is a bit of, I'm just using basic geometry, really simple loadouts and things like that. I've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm happy to take suggestions on things to animate, but I want to try and take advantage of some of these tools. Like I was saying, Long before has done a couple of wonderful demos using weighted curves and weighted points to sort of get some really organic movement going. Like, you see how this tail sort of flips on its own, which without the springs in there, you get a really different type of movement, right? And without the weighted deform, it would be different again. So I'm trying to get a glance at where the points are actually sitting, but I don't think they tend to show up when you get springs and things in there. So there's a lot that we could consider combining these tools with. I could try busting out a couple of constraints and stuff. It's really interesting seeing how they combine with the gate or the limit. We could probably even try it would be really interesting to try and combine it with the timing nodes. That could be really interesting, because the spring is a way of generating delay, but what if we were to brute force delay with the retiming nodes? That could be really interesting. I want to do another deep dive session a lot like this about the retiming nodes. So I don't know, let me know if you're interested in that, because there's just far too much to cover in an edited video, and like 5-minute video takes ages to make, whereas here I have the opportunity to get really like down and dirty for a good couple of hours and talk about lots and lots and lots of stuff. However, it also means that you have to deal with some nameless rambling. All right, I'm going to have a quick gander at one of the old examples. Was this one moving? Yeah, that has a bit of a shake on it. We were going to have a delay on something. Oh, yeah. So what we might try. So this old curve set, right? Everything is static at the moment. So we could do something like have each one daisy chained off the one that came before it. Oh, no. I got a better idea. Let's do display 2. No, I got an idea. Watch this. I'm going to do a new setup over here. We're going to start with probably a basic shape just to get the movement going, because I can't be bothered drawing anything fancy. But I want to show you a dangly thing that's not done with physics. It's just done with clever timing, but clever generated timing rather. So here I'm going to get out a weighted line with a weighted deform, so grounded by that. Standard peg to link it together. And I'm going to go linear this time, right? So we've been practicing with like envelope style things where they are round in a shape, but what about the linear stuff? So I'm going to have 3 pegs, top, middle, and bottom. No, I'm going to have 4. We'll have 2 in the middle. Like this. Yeah, connect, please. Ding, 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 ding. With 4 pegs arranged accordingly, using this new tab trick. 1, 2, 3, 4. And being the weighted line, we should see them all connect in a line, just like this, which is great. So I could go in there and start animating it like this. Wow, that's an interesting result. I've been a little curious as to like what people like Ollie Putland are going to do with this sort of system, because, you know, like what will become of the constraint style rig where you're sort of picking up elbows and animating them like this. I am curious to see if the weighted line will have a role to play in that. Considering how much this is currently thinning out the shape, I was expecting it to retain the form a little bit better than that. But that's okay. We'll see what happens next as I go and do I want to daisy chain them? I think I do. If I was to do this, this should create a bit more of a traditional bone hierarchy. You see that? How, you know, it influences the ones that come below it. So then if I was to get a bit of an animation and animate this thing sliding across the screen, as I did in the demo ages ago, which I don't think anyone who is watching now was hanging around back then, because I have 6 viewers. Oh no. So that's gonna start on the left and it's gonna move over to the right like this. So before we sort of experimented with putting like dynamic springs in, and then it would sort of dangle, which is pretty cool. We could probably do that again right now just for the heck of it, you know, for science. And we'll go spring, 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 and we'll be able to get a automatic flop. Oi, why are you only flopping 1? You should be flopping all of them, you doofus. You do as you're told. You're probably meant to be before each peg. Hey, like this. Oi, connect properly. How dare you not connect when I explicitly don't give you enough room to connect? How rude. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. Physics. So the flop automatically happens, which is fun. But I'm going to show you a slightly alternative method, because springs are really fun to muck around with in experiments like this, but they seldom show up in actual animated projects, because normally you want a little bit more deliberate control than this. When something is generated for you, yeah, it's nice, yeah, it's efficient, but we're animators. We don't like things being automatic. We want things to land exactly where we tell them to. So what if instead I get the timing node out? We'll go down to timing and I'll get a retime here. Actually, no, I think I want to retime transform like this. And I'll probably end up in the same situation as before where each one needs to be above the peg, but I'm going to try both because I've not quite done this before and we'll see what happens. Okay, so each one of these needs to be, and I probably should have configured this before I copied and pasted a whole bunch of them, set to frame offset -1. So that means each variant of this is going to play one frame behind the previous. So you see how it's sort of locked like that now. And then if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, it'll go, oh yeah, so it does need to be above the chain. 1, 2, 3, and then we probably don't need this one. Ooh, I got it the wrong way around. It needs to be +1. In fact, let's go +2. So now it should be, there we go. You see each component is going to be delayed by 2 frames before it picks up and follows along with it. So it's not like an automatically generated physics thing, but I feel like I have a lot more control over this kind of stuff because you know exactly where it's going to land. It's exactly 2 frames behind the bone before it. No more, no less. So that means if I was to influence, say, the ease on this and give it a really heavy slow in, slow out, that looks awesome. I'm really happy with that. Really predictable what it's going to do. So consider this for like anything that's just kind of waving, really. Like I'm going to take this and maybe just loop it a couple of times. And give it a standard ease this time. Whoa! Look at him go. So without the retime transform, that's just a stick. And all those are set to is delay this point by 2 frames. And because they're in a daisy chained fashion, that means delay by 2, delay by 4, delay by 6, giving us this automatic wave effect. And versions of this method have sort of existed in the past, because like, look what happens if I was to ditch the weighted line and just do it on the regular weight deformer. So it's not like it didn't work before. In fact, one might argue that this looks even nicer because it the regular weight kind of jellifies everything. But there may be some specific examples where you want it to have this really sort of strict hierarchy where we know that this one is parented to this, which is parented to this. I could have really gone for this a couple of years ago when I was animating this. Hang on, would I get copyright striked if I played? I mean, it's my own video, but it's on T-Pain's channel. I had to animate this these like dreadlocks, right? And that was done with two point constraint dynamic springs daisy chained on top of one another. It was really, really complicated. Whereas something like this is actually less nodes and probably easier to use. All right, JC Animation says, have I experimented with combining the 2-point constraints and any of the new features? I will try Harmony 2022 very soon. Very exciting. I haven't yet, and I'm a little unsure about it really, because although I believe it would work, it's more that they're alternate systems rather than complementary ones. Because things like the dynamic spring were designed to use with 2-point constraint, and therefore they work really well with the weighted deform. Like they're in my big introduction where I kind of went over every variant of the weight and the freeform and things like that, I probably should have considered talking about the 2-point constraint because it was the OG. It was the first version of being able to give 2 pegs to a single object. But combining that with the weight, like, yeah, I'm not really sure what will happen, but at the same time, I'm struggling to think of a time where it would be necessary. Like it's either you want the constraint or you don't. But I can give it a go. If we put this one here and this one here. So on the most part, it's sort of just behaving like a regular constraint would, but what happens when we put another peg here in the middle? Like, we can stretch that out and still have... Yeah, it's just that the constraint sort of influences the stuff either side of it, I suppose. So I'm sure it'll have its place. But it's gonna require some pretty out-of-the-box thinking to think of a scenario where it's like, this is the solution, you know? Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some more experimenting to be done to really get that down. Because what I really like about the 2-point constraint is, you know, it adds this automatic squash and stretch nature to it, right? And I got it to the point in this old, you might have seen it before, the skeleton animation. Hang on, let's see if I can find it. Just to remind you what it was all about. S for Skelly. Shark, sack of flour. Where is it? Oh, it's under R. R for rigid Skelly. P. Oh, no, it's not under R. What the heck? Where is it? Sorry, 1 second. Okay, there's the project file. But where's the dang GIF? Skelly? Oh no, that's a different Skelly. I've got more than one Skelly project and none of them are visible in my big folder of moots. Look at them all. Where is it? Oh, hang on. I think I've got this one. This uses the same thing. This was like, it uses a 2-point constraint, but it sort of like disabled the foreshortening. So that would only ever swing on a pivot. I feel like that use case could probably be useful because I don't think there would be a way to do that with the weights, considering it's all just about individual pegs moving around and doing their own thing. Whereas the 2-point constraint is about what is the relationship between the two pegs, like considering that it works strictly with 2, and you know, in order to have more or less, they added different nodes to compensate for those scenarios. All right, so I'm pretty well coming on time now. Is there any last minute thoughts or questions before I close this one out? Have you experimented with combining? Oh, it's quite similar to the freeform deforming. Interesting. I would encourage you to go back to the beginning of this stream once it's over. JC Animations. I spent like a whole 20 minutes talking about the similarities and the differences to the freeform and how it sort of outclasses it. So yeah, if there's no more other thoughts, I'm sorry I didn't really make any like proper animations from start to finish today. I may do that in a future stream. Please leave a comment if you're watching this later, because I'm very back and forth on whether or not doing streams on this channel is like a good idea. I get some people who are like definitely here for the long form content, and then others where it's just like a hard no. So it's kind of difficult where to take it, especially when there's very few viewers live. It's kind of tricky to tell. Today it's been averaging around 8 or so, so that's probably worth it. Any less and I start to think, oh, should I be doing this? But I've considered Twitch, but I like YouTube, because then all of my content can sort of just be here in one place. I've tried it on Twitch a couple of times, but there was just like no viewers at all because I don't have an audience there. Whereas at least this is going to show up in the recommended for people who are already subscribed and stuff, which is cool. So yeah, I'll see if these can become more regular, but I definitely do put my attention where people feel it's wanted and needed, right? I really like doing these because I don't need to rehearse as much. It doesn't need to be as heavily edited, and we get to be a little bit more dry. We get to talk about a larger variety of stuff without having to worry about it being like, punchy and algorithm happy and entertainment value and stuff like that. Again, I run a lot of classes and personal tuition sessions that run kind of similarly to this, where we're just sitting down with one or two students and we are doing a deep dive on whatever topics are relevant to them. So if it's someone who is like trying to get into the industry for the first time under a particular role, that's what we focus on. If there's someone that wants to learn how to be like a rigger or a traditional animator, that's what we focus on. If I'm teaching like university teachers, then we talk about how do we go about relaying these concepts to a classroom of 30 people. What tool sets are useful for students, which ones are not, how do we prepare people for industry, those sorts of discussions. So it's really diverse. So I don't know. My business email's in the description if anyone happens to be interested in asking me about that kind of thing. But I also get a lot of people asking about personal tuition who are not really in a position where it's financially viable. But I don't think people should be left out of education just because finances are tight. So I need to be able to find solutions to be able to help those people, but still keep the lights on as well. And I think doing streams like this every now and then is a good compromise. So if I get a handful of people saying, I really need like proper, tutoring session that's like 3 hours long on this, then that's probably when I'll start to consider doing streams and stuff on it. Heck, there might be interviews and stuff as well. I'm rambling at this point. I gotta go. Thanks for joining me. But yeah, feedback and thoughts always appreciated. I hope you got something out of Wait to Form is. If you make something, please join the Discord server and show me what you make. The working files for this session, I'm going to tidy it up and I'm going to add it to the Patreon listing, so anyone who is subscribed there will have access to all of that. Thank you very much. Thank you, JC. You're saying that's fair. I've been considering making more content for YouTube. It's a tad bit tricky as it doesn't generate money. Yeah, that's it. I am in exactly the same boat, and that is why I don't do YouTube whenever I have a job. I've been at it for like 7 years as well, so it's it's tough, but it's good being part of this community, I think. And Netron Z says that they appreciate the videos and will try to participate more. No, you're very welcome. I will try to participate more. Like I said, I've only uploaded like twice this year, so keep an eye out for further content. And I've got like a list of like 40 or 50 topics that I want to cover. Deciding on which one to do next is the trickiest bit. So make your voices heard. I will listen. Thank you very much for joining me, everyone. I will catch you next time. Bye.